Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a very special Mother Blood edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party! Good evening.
Very nice. Anybody else got another one? Throw it in now.
I don't know. We could go on and on.
We're not going to go on and on with this. No. But hey, everybody, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry STROTHE.
And I'm James GONIS.
And for this episode,
this
my
is huge.
goodness, this is a big one.
It's a big one. Yep.
It's overweight. Well,
yes. Hey, nice one.
But it was worth the wait.
It was worth the wait. Yes, but it's a big one. It's an expansive. It's like a mountain of an episode. There's so many things that we can talk about when it comes to this topic.
What is this topic?
The topic is Alfred Hitchcock, master of suspense.
Alfred Hitchcock, master of suspense.
Yes, he was a master of suspense, I've been told.
Oh my god! My god!
And I mean, I think we can all agree we're all gigantic fans.
Oh,
yes.
big.
And his work has shaped anyone who has any kind of taste in film,
In cinema, yeah.
Especially horror and suspense.
Well, yes,
thrillers,
yeah.
yes.
Now, who could we possibly get as the ideal guest for this mammoth topic?
I've been racking my brain.
I think we got someone pretty big.
We are very fortunate tonight. Our guest is a native of Massachusetts, as am I. He has a background in literature and psychology. He did doctoral work at a little university you might have heard of called Harvard. In 1980, he relocated to LA and eventually began a successful career in journalism. He's been published in American Film, Cinefantastique, the LA Times, Movie Line, and GQ, among many others. He's also been a consulting editor and chief film critic for Playboy magazine.
Playboy magazine.
I have heard of that, yes.
I have a few issues.
He has had several books published, including Real Art, Great Posters from the Golden Age of the Silver Screen.
Beautiful.
Dolls, 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 Deep Inside the Valley of the Dolls.
Nice.
And Disney animation books, 3 of them on the art of Pocahontas, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Hercules.
Nice.
Now, his 1990 book, Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, was hailed by film critic Richard Schickel as indispensable, marvelously readable, and one of the best accounts of the making of an individual movie we've ever had.
Yes.
Leonard Maltin called it a landmark, and it served as the basis for the 2012 feature film Hitchcock, starring Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren.
Academy Award winners.
No more suspense, guys. Let's welcome to Monster Party Mr. Stephen REBELLO.
Stephen REBELLO!
Hello, gentlemen, and good evening to y'all.
Good evening to you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being with us. This is awesome.
Listen, my pleasure. Hey, you forgot Bad Movies We Love.
Bad movies we love.
Yes.
Oh,
right.
Way to go, James. Yeah.
Well, and that certainly hits a spot in our
And
hearts.
that became a Turner series for a while that they wanted to continue, and I walked away from. But that's a whole other story.
Yes.
Let's get right into that now.
We're gonna save that for another time, because
I think
tonight
you're right.
we're here to talk about Alfred Hitchcock, master of suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you've had to do a lot of research on Alfred Hitchcock.
To write the book, you mean?
Yeah. I was gonna say when he started out, he didn't start out as a director. He was more like a graphics guy.
Yeah, he designed smart titles for silent movies, and usually, they're very typical of Hitchcock in that they were quite witty and stylish, and he had a really interesting flair, and he was always interested in kind of the perverse. And so even the titles kind of reflected that. So, but he quickly got out of that because it was clear that he was way, 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 beyond that. He had a big head. He had a big mind, a very, very expansive mind. You guys know, as a little kid, he used to, pin the maps of the London trains. He knew the exact routes everywhere they went, everywhere they stopped, and he would imagine what it was like to take those trips, and then finally he would take them himself, and get lost and drive his parents crazy. But he was, he was a
it's like a precursor to storyboards.
He was an odd, lonely little kid, who was very bright and not the most attractive kid in the world, and very, very shy and inward. And he was working on his stuff like we all are. He's working on his stuff like right from the beginning. I remember, I mean, one of the things that really struck me was, I met Hitchcock later in his life, and he started talking about Cary Grant. I mean, and it was a tangent because we were not talking about Cary Grant, but he started talking about Cary Grant, and he said to me, young man, when I catch a glimpse of myself in a glass, if I'm passing a shop or if I pass a mirror, I'm very surprised that I don't look like Cary Grant. It's a terrible shock to me that I still look the way I wish I didn't. And I thought that was one of the most, it was just very poignant. And it was a very unguarded moment for him, because he was a man who hid his feelings. He hid who he was because he felt like the world wouldn't accept it. And he was probably right. But I've jumped way ahead of the game, but there was just something about talking about him as a child that reminded me of meeting him later, and how that bruised, unhappy, self-conscious child was very much alive in him.
And yet his physicality was what made him an icon. I mean, right down to that caricature. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's so identifiable. And, it's interesting that he would take that poor self-esteem and turn it into something as iconic as it became.
And promotable.
You're absolutely right. But I think that a lot of great artists have done that. The great choreographer Bob Fosse, great choreographer and director Bob Fosse, was losing his hair, so he kept wearing top hats. His brilliant wife Gwen Verdon had peculiar body dimensions and shapes because of childhood illnesses she had. They developed that into one of the most remarkable styles of dancing ever. Fred Astaire had terrible insecurities about the way he looked, and he turned those into grace and charm and sophistication. Cary Grant, one of the most insecure men who ever walked the planet.
Really?
Really? Yeah, I didn't know this.
Cary Grant? I didn't know that.
Well, he used to joke about it, and people used to fall. I once was on a movie lot, and there's a thing about people who are very, very, very famous and bigger than life. At least with me, they can be behind me, and the hackles will rise. I will know that there is a disturbance in the force field.
Yes, yeah.
And one time I was on the 20th Century lot, and I felt this thing, like there's something behind me that's not like the other. And I turned around, and it was Cary Grant, and it was and then this also happened in New York when I saw Grace Kelly. And once in Rome, when I saw Audrey Hepburn coming down a flight of stairs at a wonderful hotel. You're not prepared for what they look like, because they don't even look like they do in the movies. Mm-hmm. But there's something about them that's just beyond the beyond. Mm-hmm. And Hitchcock worked with people like this. Mm-hmm. And he worked with them all day, and he went to dinner with them, and he went to parties with them, and he got to think that he looked like them. Or, because he could make jokes with them, and he could hire them and fire them, and he could, he could tell them stories that would delight them. So I hope that one of the things that we talk about in terms of Psycho and other movies tonight is how the things that Hitchcock felt were wrong with him, or that troubled him, helped create the great artist that he was. And we're still talking about him, which is, a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking, we talk about, the great directors of the golden age of Hollywood, if you want to call it that. We talk about Frank Capra and, Ernst Lubitsch and
William Wyler,
John Ford and Billy Wilder and all, but they didn't have that other thing that Hitchcock did, which was a marketable personality.
Yes.
Sure. And that was the thing.
You're right.
He was given criticism for.
Yes.
It was like he was, degrading himself as an artist because he was this saleable commodity. And to me, when I look at that, I just see somebody being able to do everything, to be the artist, to be the genius, but also to be the salesman and to do it himself and be so charming and witty. And when you saw Hitchcock in any form, whether it was, on the TV show or at the beginning of his films, or you felt like you were in safe hands. You were with a friend who was going to guide you to this wonderful place, and it always paid off.
Or Matt, how about when you saw a movie trailer, how a movie trailer would say something like, and then this happens and this change. No, it's Alfred Hitchcock saying, look at this river, or look at this, and here, this is a place of a murder. It's like,
and humor,
yes, but he's
humor being the opposite to, what the movie's about. And yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of humor in Hitchcock films, but when you have him, introducing the Birds or something like that, the Birds isn't, you wouldn't say it's a lighthearted romp,
But it's also that kind of playful idea of him doing that, in trailers or whatever, or his personality and having fun with that.
It's like pre-horror host.
But even like you look at William Castle or something like that, but with Hitchcock, behind that was a great filmmaker. Like he didn't have to do
genius,
that.
yeah.
Like and talk about, Grace Kelly or Cary Grant, he built up such a reputation that every big star in Hollywood wanted to be in his films by a certain point.
Sure. And when you see those home movies that he would take, and he's with his family and everybody is just having a good time and being silly. My personal view is that he liked to have fun.
He did. And, and part of that selling that aspect of himself was a defense. Say that you're in on the joke before someone laughs at you. So,
right.
He would mock his weight or his peculiarities or this and that. But it's interesting how the Europeans saw past that. They never, those critics separated out the huckster and the showman from the artist. They saw it right through it and saw the work. Like, look at the work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, whether he, makes jokes about how he can't drive because he's too afraid of policemen, or, he trots out for the 9,000th time the story of being locked in jail as a little boy. They somehow those critics and audiences were somehow able to see that even when he was making something that seems lighthearted, like say The Trouble with Harry or To Catch a Thief, or even North by Northwest, there are these underpinnings of tremendous anxiety, and it's like it's a world where you step down the wrong street and something terrible can happen to you. You speak to the wrong person innocently, and your whole life changes.
Yeah,
it's
that
very
danger
different.
of like
That's
fate,
right.
fate changing.
But what I love about that is that it's not like his characters were, going to Africa in a dangerous situation, or they weren't, climbing mountains and hoping they might survive. What makes so many of his movies terrifying is their ordinariness, that even if it's Cary Grant or Grace Kelly or, Ingrid Bergman or someone, extraordinarily ridiculously looking, beautiful looking, they're still doing things that are plausible. They're not, they're not doing something that's, extremely larger than life. They're out with their secretaries having too many drinks and get mistaken for the wrong man.
Right. Yeah. Right. You're on a train. You run into the wrong person. Yeah.
But also, I think when it comes to the artist of Hitchcock, like for me, when I was growing up and I got into films, and early on I started getting into Hitchcock films, to me, Hitchcock, the whole language of filmmaking I learned a lot from his films, because I mean, early on, even in his silent films and his early sound films, he would build out moments. He would make the most of things. Like, any filmmaker can, shoot a person walking into a room, then you go to a medium shot of the person picking up a glass. But if he would do a point of view of that person and then reaching for the glass, or a high shot to show how insignificant that person is. Like, there's all these different tools and things that a lot of filmmakers, especially in the early days, didn't bother to do. I mean,
The Lodger. I mean, where you've got the transparent ceiling and seeing the feet walking across.
And what movie is it?
Genius.
Even in the early days of film, which film is it where there's this? It's an early sound one where there's a person talking and they keep saying the word knife.
Knife. Yeah.
And it's like
Blackmail?
Blackmail. Yes, it's like a person is obsessed with this, or about this killing, this knife, and there's somebody next to him, and you just hear blah 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 knife, blah 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 knife. And it's but that's an example. That was when sound was still new, and he was already experimenting with that to do something different with it. Nobody would think about doing that. All the way to everything visual that he did. He just built out and opened up things that so many filmmakers didn't bother to do.
And yet it seems like in England, he was given some criticism for being too arty.
Maybe, but to me, it was that perfect balance, because he could make it incredibly he can make popcorn movies, and entertaining films, but still the craft was so apparent and so rich. Yeah. It's and from the first movie to his last movie, he didn't do anything just indifferently, or just he was never phoning it in, everything he did, whether it was a light-hearted, Mr. and Mrs. Smith comedy to To Catch a Thief or something more darker. That's what astounded me. I mean, nowadays, filmmakers have so many tools and techniques and technology at their fingertips, but he was pushing things from the very beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't know if you agree with this, but for me, he was always experimenting. He was always trying to find, the newest film, the fastest film, the light that could do this.
Right.
Could we highlight the actor by blurring out the background into a curtain? All of these things, again, but it is always in service of telling the story and putting the audience in the shoes, under the skin of the characters, making us empathize. Right. And so where I see a lot of very showy directors now, I see their work all the time, and I think, but I don't care about your characters, because really neither do you. You're just wanking.
Yes, right.
We know you're a virtuoso. We get it.
Right.
We see that. Got a story for me?
True.
Got
That's
something
true.
that's going to sweep me up and make me go, I don't care that there's illogic here, or that, this could never happen. Sweep me up, take me away, because you're really wanting to tell a story through the eyes of a character, and you want me to be, in the shoes of that character. So when you were talking about so adroitly and smartly, take a simple moment of Melanie Daniels in The Birds, Tippi Hedren walking on the dock. We're going with her. Vera Miles is walking toward the Bates house. We're in her footsteps. We're seeing what she is seeing. We're watching her. She's sort of watching us. Because then there's a reverse shot of her looking at us, or she's looking at the house. I mean, so there are all these fabulous meta games that are going on, but it's never about, I mean, to me at least, it never feels about, aren't I the cleverest thing you've ever seen? It's more about, I have a story that, when Hitchcock would do an interview, he would, at least with me, Ernie Lehman had the same thing. He would, sometimes I would feel with these guys that I knew that I was, in that sense, sitting at the foot of a master, but they always made me feel like I did when my grandfather was telling me stories as a child. They were drawing me in, not in a way that was, I'm older than you, I'm smarter than you. It's like, I've got a great story for you. And then they would just take you, wrap their arms around you, and not let go until you were screaming and oh my God, what happens next? I mean, that's how I was with my family growing up. And they were telling me stories. And that's when I was talking about earlier, when I saw that first Man Who Knew Too Much movie, the 1956 version, that I had that same sort of feeling. Like someone's got a great story to tell me. They're going to scare the hell out of me. They're going to make me nervous. It's going to be okay in the end, but I'm going to sweat bullets. So, I mean, I think he had great care about what the audience would think. When I was Ernie Lehman, I was mentored by Ernie Lehman, who the screenwriter of North by Northwest.
Oh, the greatest.
Jeez, one of the best.
Family Plot. He took me under his wing, and he told me, with Hitch, it was always about, and I never call him Hitch. Only because who should? I don't call Marty either. But anyway,
Right, yeah.
that's just a little pet peeve of mine. But because I'm quoting Ernie saying, the first thing that Hitch would say if he came up with a story point, or if he came up with the idea for now this is Ernie speaking, not Hitchcock, for a suspense sequence, Ernie would always say, where is the audience and what are they going to think? And more importantly, how are they going to feel? Hitchcock would say, and then we're going to bring them to the top of Mount Rushmore, we're going to have them dangling. And Ernie would say, great idea. Why are we there? Why are they there? How did they get there? So that combination of, Hitchcock, it was this idea man. He would just throw these brilliant ideas, against the wall. And it was up to the screenwriters often to like, yeah, bud. When they were doing North by Northwest, planning North by Northwest, Ernie had a terrible time trying to convince Hitchcock that they could not do a scene in which Cary Grant arrives at a certain place and a tornado sweeps him up.
The desert, in the air with the cornfield field. I heard that.
And that's where that went.
Hitchcock
that's where Ernie took it.
He says, and then a tornado. It's like, well, how is a tornado being controlled? That doesn't make sense.
Exactly, but that's the brilliance of Hitchcock. That don't give me the logic of it. Tell me about the thing that's going to make the audience think they're caught in a nightmare, or that a movie has the logic of the dream. And,
right.
But screenwriters would sweat bullets to make those things, play, and not they weren't always successful.
Right.
In that movie, it absolutely was. That's a film that was the first. I think it was the first Hitchcock movie that I saw on the big screen. I saw it in a film class, and I remember seeing this. And this was, around the time of, growing up. I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars and all these films. I watched this movie, and I'm like, well, this is the granddaddy of all those blockbusters. Certainly, when it comes to an action picture with thought and care and
comedy and
you're brought, and as you were saying, you're brought on this journey with Cary Grant where I'm sweating bullets the entire time. I do not know where this thing is going.
Right.
That was from 1959. And wouldn't you say, Steve, there was a time when he had a slew of, basically it's all Hollywood stuff, but before he started in England. Mm-hmm. And he did a series of stuff in England where the budgets weren't so much, and he actually had to do shorter time to do them. And it was David O. Selznick, the guy who gave us Gone with the Wind, who said, I want to sign this guy because this guy's really good. Brings him to Hollywood. And it's like, we're going to do this film called Rebecca. And they work on this film, and Hitchcock is brilliant at it. And the film wins an Academy Award for Best Picture in 1940. Yep. But, what the funny thing is, a lot of people don't realize, when I was at AFI, I had to read the book, The Memos of David O. Selznick. And it's filled with memos constantly to Hitchcock about, what are you doing? This is insane. This is a bad idea. And oh my God. And
didn't he re-edit it? And mess with the music and...
I guess they did get along or respect each other, but there was conflict, wasn't there, Steve?
Major conflict. Yeah. Because Selznick was drugging a lot, and he was addicted, and so that was a big problem for Hitchcock. Who
did you say he took like speed or something? He took
amphetamines.
Yeah, come on.
But he brought Hitchcock. The project they were going to do was Titanic. That was really what. And so what did Hitchcock come up with? For Titanic, he wanted it to be the story of a screw. that we see
It gets loose.
early in the movie, and it's looser and looser.
That's so good.
That's
It
great.
is so good. I mean, who thinks like that, right?
Like characters walk by it each time. It's like looser. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And then the end is they change the
they're on the
ending
dance
entirely. A
floor.
guy with a screwdriver just puts it back in.
Vociferously,
Yeah.
more screws.
But look, when he go ahead. Just
No, but I mean, Rebecca was, very difficult because, Hitchcock was funny. He thought it was, a woman's movie. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but in the way that he thought that the Daphne du Maurier book was very novelettish, that it was like a woman's magazine version of a really interesting story. If you read the Selznick memos and you read some of the Hitchcock papers, Hitchcock was always trying to find the human side of this. He wanted Max, he wanted what became the Laurence Olivier character to be funny and have some flaws, not like a Bronte, hero,
like the perfect,
brooding and handsome and inaccessible and he wanted him to trip once in a while. He wanted, one of the cruelest things that you ever read from Hitchcock is the numbers of ways he wanted what became the Joan Fontaine character to screw up. I mean, he took such delight in all of the ways that a woman who was not to the manner born wouldn't know how to comport herself, wouldn't know how to do their hands, wouldn't know how to handle staff, wouldn't know how to run a house. And why was that so painful in the movie? It was painful because it was Hitchcock.
Right.
He always felt like people were going to find him out, that he was really not this sophisticated gent, brilliant as he was. He was a grocer's son from Leytonstone, who had to learn how to be, a great gentleman. So, even in Rebecca, there is that stuff with Joan Fontaine. It's just painful because she's so awkward as a human being.
And she tries. She tries. Where she gets the black dress and she changes her hair and
but she's set up.
And Mr. DeWinter goes, "And what did you do to your hair?" And it's like, "Oh yes, your dress is very nice." And it's like, no woman wants to hear that. I remember thinking when I watched it, "Oh, you idiot!" It just tears me up inside.
But also the fact that she's come into this house and she's making all these mistakes, but then on top of it, you've got somebody like Mrs. Danvers.
Yeah, she's fodder. She's fodder,
making it like 3 times worse.
Right.
I mean,
Played by
there was no
Judith
way she was going
Anderson.
to win.
No. And then you have the brilliance of this creation of Rebecca, this beautiful, accomplished, gorgeous, witty, wicked woman whom you never see. But her presence looms over everything.
You just feel it.
Just like the mother looms in Psycho. I mean, there's references very early on that there's other characters mentioning their mother, and it's like it's she's completely real and alive. Of course, that's purposely too, because when you find out that she's not alive, but it's like that's absolutely true.
She's a construct.
There's a great sequence in Rebecca when Maxim de Winter, he's describing a conversation that he had with Rebecca. And as he says, she stood up and walked over. The camera is looking at it just moves up and moves. And you feel like, oh my God, you have a vision in your mind as to what that would look like. And even when he opens the door and says she fell, you imagine as the camera goes down, it's just brilliant. And it's like, you're right. Rebecca is a huge character and you never see her.
That's right.
The dead wife.
It's, that's a recurring, as you all know, that's a recurring theme in Hitchcock, whether it's Vertigo, or the other movies we're mentioning, whether it's Family Plot. It's the dominance of the past over the present, and how we never shake that because we try, but it's not shaken.
Yeah.
So we don't need to go there. We all know what we're talking about.
I would say in Rebecca,
I got
you might want to not move into the dead wife's home.
Right.
What if we got a condo first?
I had a really interesting experience where I brought a really close woman friend to see Rebecca, and I really thought she was going to love it, and she completely identified with the cruelty. She completely identified with Mrs. Van Hopper.
Oh,
wow.
Oh.
Maybe it was a good thing that you took her to find out what she's like.
You know the old cliche, you know, movies and music, and you love the same things, you hate the same things.
Right.
It's hard to look at someone in the same way when you know that they identify with the aggressor so strongly that she said, well, the most interesting character was Mrs. Van Hopper. Wow, your childhood must have been awful. That's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought immediately. But
I'm not taking you to see Straw Dogs.
No, I actually had the experience of. Oh, I wish I could say who this is. She should be outed, but I can't.
This isn't 60 Minutes,
Anyway, so I took this friend, this woman friend, to see Vertigo at the Los Angeles County Museum, and I was wrecked. I was beside myself with this movie. I'd seen it before, but this was on a big screen.
Sure.
And the audience. Probably unlike the audience would be now, but the audience was quite quiet, and they were in it. You know, for those who haven't seen Vertigo, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a very climactic moment where it's very, very dramatic, and it's involved with the Kim Novak character. And the audience, I could hear the audience was like, you know, it takes place in the bell tower. Anyway, my friend said really loudly, "All I can notice is the lace on her wig."
Oh,
are you kidding?
I wish I were.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Don't take her to movies.
No, yeah. That's like he's got going to Planet of the Apes and just going fake.
It's
like they're wearing masks. I mean, it's stupid.
I guess I have. I guess I'm very unguarded when it comes to Hitchcock movies. You know, when I saw Psycho as a kid, I said I was from Massachusetts. I grew up in Massachusetts, and you know, the audience that I saw with Massachusetts, this particular city was a mill city, and you know, people are tough. I mean, tough, hardworking, rugged, good, salt of the earth people. So I cut school a little early and went to see. And that was okay. It was no big deal.
Okay.
I went to see Psycho, and you know, in this city, Fall River, and it was packed with people. Like, there were school teachers of mine in the audience. You know what a feeling? You know what a feeling of power that is when you're a child and you see your teachers screaming, you know, beside themselves, just like, and not like wise guy horror movie screening.
No.
Sure.
These were people like, oh, I wasn't prepared for this. You could feel that, you know.
Right.
I didn't know I was letting myself in for this. But think about that. How could anyone know who had been following Hitchcock from the 50s? You know, that's
the
thing.
Yes.
Vertigo.
That's a good point.
North by Northwest, and the very next film is Psycho.
But the fact, the fact that like you said, like Vertigo and North by Northwest, like a big budget, I mean, expansive story, and the fact that then, you know, you come in with Psycho, black and white, made with the TV crew of his show for super low budget and kind of a claustrophobic little movie, but somehow
quite a bit perverse.
Yeah, but I mean, but it was so different. Just talking in general of horror films up to that point. I mean, we've all talked before in the show about how it's suddenly the horror is from within. Suddenly the horror is the neighbor. Suddenly the horror is your friend, which we haven't not really seen that much. It was all gothic, vampires, and the other, you know, the outside horror. Sure. But that movie, I can't imagine actually like 1960 seeing that, expecting like another, you know, Man Who Knew Too Much or Vertigo, and then seeing that and that movie. I think, I mean, that movie is so pitch perfect to me. and so watchable. I mean, I'm sure I've seen it 100 times, and I never get tired of. It's something about. I mean, it is something a little bit of lightning in a bottle to a point, I think. But it's also Hitchcock, his brilliance, the fact that he made that like a quarter of the budget of some of his previous movies, and not a bunch of huge big stars. I mean, he had Janet Leigh, but like.
And what he does with Janet Leigh. I mean, that's the
whole idea too. Yeah.
That's the question for me is, I know that this was an early attempt at doing you have to watch the movie from the beginning to the end. You can't come in the middle. How did they keep under their hats all these spoilers? What happens to Janet Leigh? I know that it had
a little
very
easier
good,
back then.
I know it had very good word of mouth, but how do you keep the ending from getting out? And what happens to Janet Leigh? How do they do that?
Well, Matt, can I just ask, since we're talking about Psycho, I mean, Steve wrote that great book from 1990, Alfred Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, and it's used as the basis for that amazing film from 2012, Hitchcock. And they kind of tell the story. There's a lot of stuff in this that I had no idea, but there are a couple of unsung heroes in this. And one of them has to be Alma Redville, his wife, and Peggy Robertson. Because, Steve, wasn't it Peggy, his assistant, who found the Robert Bloch novel and said, this might be good. And then showed it to Hitch, and Hitch said, this is great. Why don't we buy up all the books? Is that true? Steve, is that true?
It is. It's very true. Look, the movies that we've been talking about, some of the movies we've been talking about, the movies that audiences knew him for, the beautiful people in beautiful locations, the Riviera,
the exotic,
I mean, we all know those movies, and they're all gorgeous, and people are still imitating them, parodying. Yeah. So, but that was a trap for him. Hitchcock felt like, I've done that. That's why he said no to James Bond, doing that with Cary Grant.
Wow.
He said, I've already made that movie. We called it North by Northwest. Why would I do that again?
Right.
And he was correct. The thing is, people have to remember, I think Hitchcock, the movie, is at least good in that way, in that it suggests what I kept trying to put into the script, his desperation. It wasn't just looking for something else to do. It was like, I don't know where to go.
Right.
I don't have Grace Kelly. She left. I tried to get Audrey Hepburn. We spent a lot of money on a production that would have been one of the great Hitchcock movies called No Bail for the Judge. And it just evaporated, and they lost all the money. They couldn't do it. And he was like, what am I going to do? I mean, he was desperate to find something that was controllable, that would be different, that would stop critics from saying, he keeps making the same movie. Pauline Kael, much later, said very famously, he keeps making the same damn spy movie over and over, and he's been making it since the 30s. Shut up, Pauline.
Yes, forever.
But so Peggy Robertson, who had worked with him for years, and a number of other people, including his agents and his managers, everyone was beating the bushes, always looking for that thing that Hitchcock, even if you found a sentence in a book, he would go, now that's interesting. I'll buy the whole book just for that sentence. That idea is interesting. A man falls in love with a woman. She falls off a tower. He sees another woman, and he tries to recreate her in that woman's image. None of the women actually exist. How brilliant is that? So Psycho, honestly, was an act of desperation. And I mean, that's why I put it into the movie. I had Hopkins saying to Alma, to Helen Mirren, I wanted to be fun again. I wanted to be like the fun we had when we made movies in England. It was one of my favorite lines to write. And then he meant it, because the thing was, if you do a movie, and it's still true, if you do a movie for a really low budget, nobody's going to be looking over your shoulder. Paramount drove him crazy with the budget for Rear Window. They drove him crazy with the budget for Vertigo, which didn't make money, so that was a problem.
Right.
And then he goes up like this and does North by Northwest, major hit at MGM. Paramount was like so over him. So he was like, what am I going to do? And Peggy said, our friend Anthony Boucher writes about this book in the New York Times, his column, Criminals at Large. And it sounded intriguing. So they got the book. Hitchcock read it. He did what he almost always did, made a preemptive anonymous bid. As you know, Robert Bloch did not know, and his agent did not know who was buying that book. So they lowballed it. But immediately Hitchcock saw, okay, this is different. American International, William Castle, Roger Corman, they're making these movies.
He had noticed that, right.
Totally noticed it.
Yeah.
But, he and his wife would actually, I tried to put this in the movie and wouldn't do it, but he and his wife used to drive around on Friday and Saturday nights and see which movies of the drive-in got the biggest car backups.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so when he would see something like that, he said, he didn't say, I'm not going to quote him because I wasn't there, but he saw that there was something, he could tap into a different kind of audience with something like Psycho. But this is, I know he said this because many people who worked with him told me, he would give them the book and say, read it, and then come back and say, what did you think? And most of them didn't like it. They thought it was terrible. And you can't be thinking of making this. And he would say, but what if somebody really good made a movie like this?
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't think any of it. He didn't think any of it.
Take a scary genre movie and make it, but have it done by a master. Put the care into it.
But however, the film that we know as Psycho, that was not the book. The book was about Ed Gein and the stuff that he did, right?
No.
Loosely. I mean, it was
loosely.
Not really. It is loosely. It's a little Ed Gein. It's a little another guy that Robert Bloch knew, not a killer, but someone who was dominated by his mother and would take his mother to screenings and all this stuff. But anyway, yet, Hitchcock himself said everything in the movie Psycho is in the book Psycho. But that isn't quite true because he took a big chance on first of all, there was an early screenwriter named James Allardyce, and he was the guy that wrote all the intros for the Hitchcock show.
Okay.
And he also did a couple of really good scripts for the Hitchcock show. You know them. But that script didn't work out. It was too TV. It was just too flat. And so he hired, because Paramount suggested him and someone else suggested him, a new screenwriter, really, in Joseph Stefano, who was really interesting, weird, and I mean this in the most embracing way, really weird, kind of troubled, smart, energetic, funny, just strange guy. And they hit it off. And, I think Mr. Stefano wrote one of the great Hitchcock scripts of all time. He took it right out of the arena of television. Once again, he focused on the characters. How can we take the audience into this world? We can make them follow the fall of this character named Marion.
And then to still
Marion in the movie.
And then to still have you invested in Vera Miles and and her character, if that didn't work, every little piece, if one little piece of that movie somehow didn't work, or if Anthony Perkins wasn't right or the performance wasn't right, it wouldn't. But just to think it all just comes together perfectly.
You pull the tiniest thread in that movie and it all collapses.
Yeah.
But look, Hitchcock called it his 30-day picture. To him it was, we're going to make this really inexpensively. Very, very late in the shooting, he was still debating about whether to cut it down to an hour and show it on the TV.
Wow.
Hard to believe.
Oh, yeah. This is all, of course, before the score was added and before, it was just an early edit.
Yeah.
But, when Robert Bloch and Joe Stefano, when they saw the first cut, neither of them liked it. Neither of them thought it was any good. It was really flat, and, the beautiful pacing that you get in the normal Hitchcock movie wasn't there.
Right.
Nobody was really popping. I only learned, after I wrote the book, people come out of the woodwork and then they tell you things. So well, where were you when I was writing this?
Right.
Yeah.
This very, very close Hitchcock associate said, he was so unhappy with Janet Leigh.
Really?
He thought he had made a terrible mistake. He liked her personally, enormously.
Mhm.
She was just a lovely, really nice lady. So he liked her very much, but he thought she was giving him, he said, she's giving me that MGM bullshit. Where, which, I mean, she was an MGM contract player.
Right.
And so it was all nice. It was all that deep.
Mhm.
And he really had to work with her. And, he told her dirty jokes and, all the things that you can do with an intelligent person and they don't scream. She got,
Right.
she got what he was doing. And
Interesting.
she realized she had to go deeper, and she did.
Right.
Because he thought she had the capacity, but he was just distraught, because really she's the beginning of the movie. You lose.
Yeah, I know. And you think that's going to be the whole movie. That's the thing.
It's Janet Leigh,
right.
And it's 1960. You don't kill movie stars.
Right. And the structure of that story, was that the same in the book? What happens to Marion Crane?
Yeah. What's deepened is, the Sam and Marion relationship, and that dialogue they have in the hotel room in the beginning. It's a model of building character while going, look, she's in a bronze slip. This doesn't happen in American movies in the 1960s.
Right.
And look at her body, and John Gavin, not hard to look at. So you got these two really sexy people in the middle of the day, on her
little rendezvous,
afternoon delight.
Actually, Stephen, I wanted to ask you, because when you described the shooting of that scene in your book, Hitchcock was frustrated with the lack of chemistry and sexual tension between them. Yeah. And it was as if he had to instruct Janet to turn him on a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that true? But it was a little vague in the book. Maybe it was being kind of polite. I couldn't quite visualize what was. Can you elaborate on that?
I think you can. I think you did. Look, it was. Look, I mean, Janet was a lady, and she also knew she had a job to do, and she knew it wasn't working.
Right.
And Joe Stefano used to tell me, if I looked like John Gavin did without my shirt, I'd never put a shirt on. But every 2 minutes, John Gavin was like, telling his stand-in to go in, and like he would put his shirt on. He was really uncomfortable.
Huh.
He didn't like being sexualized, and it transmitted in the bed stuff. It was not delivering. And so, I mean, what Janet did was, as I understood it from her, she just would, touch him, rub his leg, rub his arm. She was pretty gorgeous then.
Stunning.
Look, it's tough though to do a scene like that. I mean, I'm not trying to bag on John Gavin. I mean, he was uncomfortable. I mean, he had personal issues that he felt uncomfortable in that situation. So that's not the easiest thing to do. You've got, a bunch of guys watching you in bed, and they're hating you because you're that good looking. They're hating you because you're in bed they're hating you because you're in bed with Janet Leigh and you're not performing. So that and like Janet had said to me, I honestly didn't realize it was such a big deal, that scene we were doing. They were literally men hanging off the rafters. You could look up and they would be looking down.
It's like a peep show. Yeah.
Looking down her bra. Well, that wasn't typical of American movie making that time. And it certainly wasn't typical of anything that, poor Janet had ever experienced at MGM with MGM and their bullshit. So it was, there are real hot buttons being pressed in that scene. It may look all hunky-dory now, but it's still a very sexy scene. The way they look, it feels intimate. I mean, to me, one of the most startling and intimate and incredibly sexy scenes Hitchcock ever did, and this is what he was trying to get at with this scene, was Cary Grant and Ingrid Bergman in Notorious. When they're just nuzzling each other, there's no music, they're crossing the room. It's so sexy, you don't need to see any flesh. The erotic sparks, I don't care if they're real. I felt them. I think every audience member felt them.
Right.
So I think in the end that Hitchcock was satisfied with the scene, but he was not nice to John Gavin. He thought he was very dumb. And he thought he was like the poor man's Rock Hudson. And he tried to get Rock Hudson. He thought that would be fun to put Rock Hudson in the beginning of the movie, and then he goes away, and he comes back later in the movie. But then it would have taken away from the shock of the Janet Leigh being killed. But the reason I'm saying that is that Hitchcock would accidentally on the set call Gavin Rock.
Oh no!
I'm sorry, John.
Ouch.
Wow.
So so he was, as Janet said, he was a little imp. He would definitely do things to sort of stir the pot. Let's put it that way. But that's what the entire movie was about. I mean, you stop and think of, there were other people that they had to look at. If Tony Perkins said no, he could have said no.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That could have ended someone's career. In some ways, it ended a kind of career that Anthony Perkins thought he might have.
True.
Right.
Was he a little ambivalent about doing it, or
no? Apparently not. Apparently he just embraced it and jumped right into it. He was really unhappy with. I mean, Paramount. It sounds silly now, but Paramount kept talking about him as their $1 million star. They spent so much money building him up as a new James Dean.
Right.
That's what they thought he was. The good-looking, turbulent young guy who, born into a world he doesn't understand, and he's a rebel. But all that. That's not what Anthony Perkins was. It's not what he conveyed at all. Right. To me, he conveyed a really troubled guy who was hiding. In every movie. One of the most instructive things you can ever do to see Anthony Perkins is to try to see him in The Matchmaker, which later became the musical Hello Dolly, the Thornton Wilder thing. Paramount shot it with Anthony Perkins and Shirley MacLaine and Shirley Booth and the young Robert Morse. It's painful. It's painful. I watched it with a bunch of friends, and they said Anthony Perkins is so unhappy and so uncomfortable and so creepy, and not like, oh, he's like creepy and psycho. It's like he doesn't know how to do comedy, and it's like really off-putting. So honestly, to me, Perkins' career was in trouble, and I think he knew it, and he thought it's Hitchcock, and it's going to be something. Yeah, and I think he just was like, I'll go to Europe and I'll do other things, but I've got to shake things up. And so everyone was trying to shake things up. Janet Leigh didn't want to be, Miss Peaches and Cream anymore. Right. Hitchcock didn't want to be the guy that made the Technicolor baubles, as he called them. Vera Miles just wanted to finish her contract with Hitchcock.
It was like I said, everything came together. It was like the perfect storm.
Yeah. And Anthony Perkins is a guy that you just, throughout that film, even to the very end, you're rooting for him. You just feel so sorry for this poor guy.
I know.
You do.
Considering everything that he's done.
It's so true. He's one of those people, Hitchcock adored him. They really loved each other because Hitchcock always appreciated intelligence. And Anthony Perkins was very cerebral and very sardonic, very, very cutting. And Hitchcock thought he was hilarious. He loved him. And oddly, Kim Novak had an interesting quality. It's that vulnerability. It's like you almost feel like the camera is catching something that they have no control of, that those people have no control of. And it's one of the reasons I think Kim Novak is so effective in Vertigo, in a way that Vera Miles would have given a brilliant performance, but of a very different kind. But
that's right. She was up for that, right?
The whole movie was designed around her.
Right. That's right.
Kim Novak has said too that the film kind of reflects what she thought Hollywood was doing to her. Like, all they wanted to do was just remake her in their own image. They didn't want to really know anything about her.
Stand over there in that sweater and look that way. When you have more to you inside going on, that's got to be so demeaning and so horrible. Kim Novak and Hitchcock didn't have no matter how they try to gloss it over now, they didn't have the best time on that movie. he didn't like her. He thought she was silly, and she had all these preconceived notions of what she should wear and what the character would be like. But you know what? He was wrong.
Yeah.
He was wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think he ever admitted that. But I have to. I'm a Libra. You notice I balance everything. so you have to. But you have to think about this from the point of view of Hitchcock. People. I'll post. It's happened recently. I'll post something on Facebook or Twitter about whether it's Valley of the Dolls or like who was going to be in that movie or whom Hitchcock wanted, say for Strangers on the Train, and invariably you get these people who go, "Oh, that never would have worked." No. You couldn't have William Holden as Guy Haynes, the tennis player in Strangers on a Train. You couldn't have Montgomery Clift, and you couldn't have Olivia de Havilland because it would throw off the whole balance of the movie. No, it would throw off the movie that
Right.
Yeah.
The movie that Hitchcock wanted, the Hitchcock movie that Strangers on a Train would have been that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
William Holden. That's an interesting choice too.
Yeah,
really
it's funny how you mentioned casting. Just really quickly, Steve, because I think there's a quick little thing that they suggest in the movie when they're looking for the Norman Bates, and someone holds up a picture of Roddy McDowall. Do you know if Roddy McDowall was ever considered? They said that Roddy McDowall wanted to work with it. Look, guys, he had this string of, he had done North by Northwest. Actually, he was like a big director, and everyone wanted to work with him. So is that true that he was seriously considered?
Yeah, there's, when I was going to, by the way, I'm going to say something about doing the book, Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho. When I proposed that to publishers in New York, that I write this book, I'm not joking, to a person, they said, what about a movie that's more important, better than Psycho?
What?
Yeah, how we feel now is how I felt then, but I can tell you, people didn't feel that way then. They thought I should do a book on North by Northwest. So did I. They thought I should do this and that. But Psycho, even Vera Miles, he made so many movies that were better than that, more important than that. And, so Psycho's fortunes have really changed. I'm old enough to have seen this over time. I remember when I used to talk about the movie Rope. Oh, what a terrible movie. Now,
right. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I love Rope. Not a frame of the movie changed.
Yes.
That movie that everybody panned when it came out. And I was looking at New York Times reviews, Post, all terrible movie.
Right.
Rope.
And talk about
Psycho, terrible reviews.
And
Rope.
Talk about a concept of like infusing the concept of the movie with the technique of filmmaking. Exactly. the one shot. It's like genius. It's
exactly.
like making it work and making it suspenseful and good,
and taking a chance and bringing it to some place that Hitchcock hadn't gone before.
And look, for listeners who don't know, Rope, when Hitchcock made this, imagine it's like a camera can hold, was it like 10 minutes worth of film?
Right.
So he did these scenes, which basically it's like choreography of like a play almost, but it's like they would run for 10 minutes. The camera's constantly rolling, and then there would be some kind of edit point where they go up against someone's back, or there's some kind of easy transition, and then another 10 minutes would last.
Because the idea is that this movie is all taking place in real time, one shot,
one continuous take,
from character to character,
concept,
to room to room.
And the first time I watched that film, knowing very little about it, I thought it was very successful.
Matt, were you tense? I was 10.
My God.
Even the stuff where
I've known about the story of what that movie was based on.
Right.
Yeah.
So, that was the Leopold and Loeb story was fascinating to me. I'd seen Compulsion, but seeing it done in this manner, and then the way that these two guys, you kill someone just for the thrill of it, and they hide the body in a trunk, and then they have a party.
Oh, and this is this is 1948.
Yeah,
somebody's doing that. Like it's it's like.
Well, look, somebody wrote it first.
But for a filmmaker to do that, it was.
But I think one of the reasons that movie freaked so many people out was homophobia.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I think that's why I don't know. But I think that could be part of the reason that Cary Grant pulled out and James Stewart had to take his place. And
really?
Montgomery Clift pulled out yet again. And
okay, yeah.
Interesting.
I didn't know that.
So there's always the story behind the story.
Right.
And sometimes it's way more interesting or as interesting as the movie itself.
Yeah.
But, and of course, the 10-minute take, as Hitchcock called it, he did in Under Capricorn, too, which nobody ever talks about. But it's all there. The camera is sweeping across this house in Australia and, bringing you into this really neurotic relationship with Ingrid Bergman and Joseph Cotten. See, the thing is, Hitchcock to me is, and he had good writers, and when he had the best writers, he was able to do this. He was fascinated by relationships, and Psycho begins with a relationship. It begins with Sam and Marion. Why are they meeting in the middle of the day to have sex in a hotel? What's keeping them apart? Why does she seem more into the relationship than he does? Part of that is, is an actor who isn't very good with warmth.
Right.
Isn't very good with, empathy. But look at how they made that work in terms of the movie. It made me feel sadder for Janet Leigh.
Yes,
Yeah.
She's at a very desperate place from all sides.
Yeah. And she, and I think one of the things that I think was brave of Janet, and she even said to me, was like, Marion's a woman getting older and seeing her options, the doors closing on her options. Look, when I was a kid and I saw Psycho with my school teachers and all these grown-ups, I was too young to be in that theater. I never should have been in that theater. But all I got was, this is so weird and scary. But I wasn't swept up by the characters of the story or the terrible destruction of a human being, which is what happens to Norman Bates. But when you return to the movie as you grow older and hopefully wiser, and you've been knocked around and hurt yourself and experienced things yourself, it just has a whole different feel and a whole different life. But that to me is the story of what makes a great movie great. Not just that you can see it again and enjoy it, and in the case of Psycho, enjoy those really funny, witty lines and the snappy dialogue and the poignant dialogue, but that you can get underneath it and you really understand that, Norman Bates is not just a little model that you make or a little doll that or a bumper sticker that you have or some Facebook meme. He's a character who was a good guy who was destroyed by circumstance and was trapped. He had or found no way out. And I guess as I've gotten older and seen Psycho more, I'm shocked by how disillusioned it is and how despairing it is and how terribly, terribly sad it is. At the same time, you can enjoy it as a thrill ride. That's the thing that I love about Hitchcock movies. No matter who you are, where you are in your life, there's a point of entry, and there are many different points of entries, and they're all perfectly valid. You can go to Psycho now, and you can see how symbolism is layered in. You can see how character developments are layered in, how things are paid off. It's beautifully constructed. But you can also just, go for the thrill ride. There's that too.
It's interesting that same year you had an English film, Peeping Tom, which shared some similar themes and ruined a career.
Yeah.
And then you've got Psycho, which was this blockbuster, and how the telling of that kind of story in one way worked, and the other one, and of course, Peeping Tom has been rediscovered and reappraised. But it's interesting that Hitchcock could take all those perverse elements and make that work for.
Well, but you see, I love Peeping Tom, by the way.
Oh, and me too. Yeah.
It's a cold movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a cold, brutal. There's no way in.
It's very detached.
You can
purposely, I think. Yes.
Yes, you can.
Right.
It's like watching the home movie of that guy's little kid in the home movie. It's like you're watching. Yeah.
True.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But Hitchcock would never have done Psycho, no matter how many times Joe Stefano suggested it, from the boy's point of view, as they call him, the boy's point of view, because you can't follow Norman Bates and have the twist But also, you don't want to live there. You want the normal person to lead you into that story
and it's that fateful way they
take you to the fun house. But you don't want to live in the fun house. You don't want to live in that head. I wondered recently when I saw Joker, which I liked a lot, which other people didn't, but I really liked it. I wonder if there is a way to make a Psycho movie that is more Joker, where you really understand the psyche and the way that person looks at the world. Do you know what I mean? Instead of you're just looking at him from outside and, oh, he's the boogeyman.
That's been attempted to a certain extent when it comes to, there was that Bates Motel show.
Yeah.
And some of the sequels, I just don't feel like it's been consistently effective.
Well, before you ask, because almost everyone does, but before you ask, I think Psycho ended. I mean, the first movie wrapped it up in a nasty black, horrifying, despairing ribbon.
Right.
I never needed to go back. I personally never needed to go revisit Lila Crane or Sam or any of those people. They're fine. Let Norman be. I don't.
Well, sometimes
I don't knock the people for making them, but I never saw the point.
Some franchises can just go on too far. I'm thinking of the Alien franchise, where the more you see these sequels, it actually starts to diminish the original experience. The one thing about Psycho is that no matter how many sequels, whatever they do to the franchise, the original will stand alone, and everything else just goes out of memory.
Yeah, and I think
it'll always be
is,
Hitchcock.
Yeah, I think that's something of Hollywood. Like, I think eventually there was just destined to be a sequel to Psycho. I happen to really like Psycho 2 a lot, but if they were going to make a sequel to Psycho, I'm glad they made it the way they did.
And we had Tom Holland on the show, and he said, when he got this job,
that it was
he knew there was no way he was going to win. No matter what he did, he was going to get beat up.
I remember when Robert Bloch himself was promoting his sequel, Psycho 2, the novel, which had no relation to the film, but one of the things he was quoted as saying was that he had to distance himself from, because the impact of Psycho, we're living in a post-Norman Bates world, and he had to write it as if Norman Bates never existed in fiction.
Yeah.
And that also kind of brings back how there's no way that we can't take for granted the impact that movie had, because the reaction that it brought, I mean, Hitchcock himself and Stefano, they're quoted in your book as saying, Stefano said he didn't hear screaming, laughing maybe, but we had no idea. They couldn't predict the reaction. And that's because no one had ever done anything like that before.
Right.
Now, after the slasher boom of the 80s and all the Halloween sequels of Friday the 13th, it's like, but you put yourself back then in 1960, completely.
A new decade, unsuspecting audience members sitting and seeing that
what
movie.
What just happened?
Well, you bring up a good point. And Stephen, just let me ask, when this film was made, 1960, like James was talking about the 80s, 90s, hey, slashers and stuff, no one really cares. But back then, did Hitchcock really meet with the censors, with the Hays Code guys?
Yes.
And he had to tell them, because what they claimed, look, you see stabbing and stuff, and he had to tell them, no, you don't actually see stabbing.
Yeah.
Lying.
So that is true. He did meet with them?
Yeah, I mean, he met with them all his career. He had to. That was like the Pope calls you for an audience, and you have to go. I mean, they could have said, we won't let this film be shown in theaters. And with Psycho, he might have gone, that pushes me. We'll just do it on TV and we'll cut out the rough stuff. But he was a master at that. I mean, he was playing games with the censors from the 40s, even with Rebecca, certainly with Notorious. All kinds of things he got away with. But it was always, it was always a sleight of hand where he would do something over here while I was doing this. And censors are like certain people in a certain political party in this country. They're not very funny, and they don't get get nuance.
Right.
And righteous people with sticks up their posterior, they're too busy defending the flag, and they're too busy defending some world that never existed. and so Hitchcock thought those kinds of people were, necessary. You had to deal with them, and you had to, had to pay them some respect. But yeah, he did. He had to go in like a little schoolboy defending his book report. But he was such a delightful, charming guy. He had the meeting out of, the palm of his hand.
Right.
In 5 minutes, and look, he played the best game of all. Oh yes, we'll cut that. You're right. I pushed it a little too far. He sent the print back. He didn't touch a frame.
Really?
A lot of which had to do with the shot.
Oh, okay, we didn't see any stabbing. It's fine.
Yeah, the shower sequence, which for years has been debated. Okay, how much did Saul Bass have to do with that? And you interviewed a lot of different people who were on the set, including Janet Leigh, and I guess a lot of the controversy came from interviews that Saul Bass did, where he claimed to have more involvement over it than he really did, more authorship over it.
Yeah.
So it really was, Hitchcock's being there. Saul Bass might have contributed some storyboard and some ideas, but it is not as if he directed it and Hitchcock wasn't there.
That's correct.
Right.
I mean, that's the simplest and most direct way to talk about it. Look, I did not have a dog in the fight when I was writing that book. I wanted people to tell me the truth. It's Hollywood.
Right.
But what I'm saying is I was very open. I didn't, obviously I knew about those comments that Saul Bass had made. He'd gotten into a lot of trouble for those kinds of comments, saying that he directed the shower scene. Here comes the Libra. I wanted Mr. Bass to say, what I meant was, since I did the visual concept with Mr. Hitchcock for that, I directed it on paper, but he wouldn't do that. He needed somehow to tell a story about his having been on the set and yelling cut and doing those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there, but I talked with a lot of people who were, and you would have thought that one of them would crack and say, well, I remember him being there. What would any of those people, what would they have at that point in their lives and in careers? Why would they need to say that it was only Hitchcock who did it if that weren't the truth? I mean, some of those people at that time, when I interviewed some of those people, they had falling outs with Hitchcock. And it would have been a time for them to go, oh, I'll get back at him. Certainly other people have done it who shall remain nameless. But there wasn't even a hint of that from them.
Right.
It's like, no. And they all knew who Saul Bass was. He was on the set. There are photos of him in the motel room. He was there. He was also asked to stop coming to the set.
Oh, interesting.
That didn't.
He kept saying, "I'm directing this."
Honestly, I don't know what he was saying, but he was obviously a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
He had a lot of opinions and not shy about expressing them. When the book came out, he made it very clear that he felt that I did not like him and that I didn't give him his due. And I honestly didn't feel that was the case. I just was listening to people who were there. I mean, why would I say he's lying or they're lying? I wasn't there. They were.
Well, so and you weren't editorializing. You were just quoting what other people were telling you.
I wasn't. Yeah. I didn't feel that was my job.
Well, Stephen, can you tell me, since you talked to so many people, there's that book, that 2010, The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower, that I've heard that Janet Leigh did the whole shower scene, but there was a body double. Was there? So there was.
Oh yes, there was. But Janet Leigh didn't want to talk with me about that.
She didn't want to talk to you about that?
No, well, she wanted to talk about the shower scene, but when I brought up the Hitchcock called Marley the nude model, the nudist.
Yes, that was Marley Renfro.
Yes, Marley Renfro. Yes, sorry. I
have her calendar.
I say the name Marley, and I assume everyone knows Marley Renfro. She's a terrific lady. But I asked Janet, when you were able to look at the shower scene or able to look at the movie without that initial revulsion of, that's got to be a terrifying thing to see yourself being, hacked to death. she said, I would love to say this. I know my body very well. There's not a frame of that. That's not my body. So
really?
But she also said to me that Hitchcock presented Marley to her and asked her to disrobe. And she said it was a perfect match. So, you know what I'm saying? I think Marley is telling the truth. I think Janet was telling her truth.
Right.
So, look, we wouldn't have been talking about this movie if The Thing hadn't come off. So, a lot of people put their lives and their careers on the line, and they were lucky because it came off. And when that happens, everyone wants to take credit.
Sure.
If it had not been a success, everyone would have been running from it. But I have to tell you that the important people, I mean, the people that worked on Hitchcock's TV crew were thrilled that I was doing this book, and they were lovely. They all wanted to talk because no one ever talked to them.
Right.
No one. But there were other people, like important people with a capital I, who didn't want to talk about it. Like they didn't want to talk about that movie because it wasn't Vertigo, it wasn't North by Northwest, it wasn't something that the Academy would have paid attention to. So,
Stephen, I'm sorry if you'll indulge me with a couple of quick trivia questions, and these may go nowhere. Okay, but I'm a big fan of the movie, and these little things have always kind of. One of them is the mother's voice was voiced by two actresses and one actor, or two women and one man, right?
Yeah.
And they were edited sort of all together or out of sequence, but it was a combination of all three of them.
Yeah, just like knife, the thing they were doing in Murder, he was doing with the voice all those years later.
Wow.
Yeah. In the climactic scene in the cellar, Norman comes down with a knife, and his clothes are coming off, and Mother seems to be screaming something.
You hear Norman.
Is that what it was?
Well, I hear.
I am Norma Bates.
Is that what it was?
Oh, is that what she really? I am Norma.
Listen, I never heard that.
I didn't hear that.
Like Norma, but it's so unsettling because you kind of hear it. It's kind of maybe coming from his mouth, but not quite. But it's just so it's weird to me. It's like almost like, oh my gosh, like the specter, the ghost of her, coming out of his mouth. It's freaky.
And what is he saying?
He's just grimacing with his mouth.
But you hear the
thing is coming out.
Yeah.
So
I thought he was just screaming, going, "Ah!" I didn't know it was words. You hear that?
Yeah. I heard words.
Matt, did you hear words? Matt, did you hear words?
I heard words, but they were never clear to me.
Oh, wow.
If you take a listen to the newest Blu-ray, you will hear very clearly, I am Norma Bates. I think it's a terrible line.
Norma Bates?
It's a terrible line, and it never should have been in there. It's so on the nose. Especially when it's
it's pretty masked. I mean, I have to see it again now if I'm listening to it, but like it kind of just it just makes it unsettling to me.
Oh, it's nice.
It's competing with this shrieking violence to it. My other question had to do with, in Bloch's novel, when Vera Miles opens up one of Norman's books, the description is that the image that leapt out at her was almost pathologically pornographic.
Yeah.
In the film, as it is edited, you see Vera Miles pick up a book and look at it, but then you cut away. You don't get a reaction shot, and you don't get an insert of the book, certainly. I have read accounts that there was a lot of effort put into her reaction shots, but we don't see a reaction shot. Do you know anything about that?
Of course I do.
Thank God.
What the hell am I here for? Hitchcock and Vera Miles had a falling out because of Vertigo. She dared to get pregnant. But what they never talk about is that when she reported for work. She was ready to go to work, and Mrs. James Stewart said, Jimmy needs to take a vacation. So they delayed the movie for James Stewart. They never say that. If you look at the production records, Vera Miles reported for work.
Wow.
You know what I mean? She was ready. She had had her baby. She wanted to fulfill her contract. She wanted to do the movie. But anyway, I digress. However, ask your question again, because I stepped on it, but just ask the question again in a simple way.
Vera Miles looks in the book, and you see a shot of her looking in the book, but then it cuts away and you never get any sort of payoff on what she sees in the book or reacts to what's in the book.
Okay, well, let's talk about what Hitchcock shows us, which is, you see, I'm older than all of you, so when I see the book, what I see is the way they used to bind pornography. They didn't.
You don't have to tell me.
I didn't figure I would have to. They would do it with kind of Bargello, and it looked very elegant. But when you looked inside, it's the way British porn used to look, especially in the Victorian era.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Bloch in the novel, as you say, is very, very clear about Norman is always reading about the Incas and tribes that torture people and pull their flesh apart and all that. So that's all. If you've read the book and you remember that, you bring that as a trace memory. That was one of the moments where everyone who watched Hitchcock watched Vera Miles on the set. That and her throwing back her hand and swinging the light, which she hit the first time perfectly.
Wow.
But he couldn't stop smiling because she was perfect in every way.
Wow.
And in the scene, in the moment you're talking about, Hitchcock said she raised her eyebrow in the slightest way, and it told the audience everything. I asked my father, I saw Psycho with my dad second time. I said, when you saw the book, what was in there? He said, oh, it was something filthy. You could tell by the way her eyebrow went.
Because it's subtle. It's subtle.
Oh, it's super subtle, but that's what Hitchcock loved. He loved subtlety. He loved people who would just do that tiny little, did I see that? Or did I not?
All right, thank you.
He was also tweaking the censors because she was really a great actress.
Yes.
She could be very subtle when she was, had the right role. Anyway, what she was telling you was that it was a woman of her stature and her breeding would never have imagined something could. I mean, her reaction when Norman comes in it's a masterclass. She's the audience going, what? It's 1960. What are we seeing? What is this? It's like, we're not supposed to be seeing this.
Right.
I hope I answered your question.
Well,
you did. Thank you.
Very good question.
Also, the look, getting back to Tony Perkins, the look on his face in that scene, that look of just sheer mania. I mean, that is so terrifying. And so when you've got like that triple threat of Vera Miles, you've got the mother in the chair, and then him coming in there, like, what is going on?
Yeah,
it's like as if his split personality is suddenly he's either Norman or his mother, but somehow in that moment it's like they're both together.
They're both right.
It's like imploding. It's like it's just it's insane.
He's got that strange grin.
I wish I could. Well, and also that sort of like he's looking into himself. He almost becomes cross-eyed.
Yes.
It's just stunning.
It's so crazy.
I wish I could bring you all those years ago when I would be talking with people about who were there while the monologue was being spoken and Anthony Perkins was doing the scene, and every one of them, it was like their voices got hushed, and they said it was like from another world. It was so frightening, and people talked about getting chills and their hair standing on end, and they said it was beyond great acting. It was about like possession. That was my favorite.
Wow.
They said it was
so after
else.
That movie, so Psycho, at that time, one of his biggest hits, right? Even everything else that came before. So was there, because there was a bit of a gap between that and his next one, which was The Birds. But so after Psycho, though, was there even more of the, now Hitchcock has pegged the master of suspense. He's the thriller guy. He's the horror guy. What's he going to do next to top himself after Psycho? Was there pressure of that kind? Was there?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. People talk about how Psycho destroyed Anthony Perkins' career or just derailed it in a way. It did the same thing to Hitchcock. He didn't know what to do.
I can imagine.
But he didn't want to do that again. He thought, I've done that. I mean, his idea was not to, well, that was horrible. Let me do something even more terrifying. It was this Audrey Hepburn movie that I mentioned that was going to go next, called No Bail for the Judge, about this. It was Lawrence Harvey to be in it, Audrey Hepburn and John Williams, and the great John Williams. And Audrey Hepburn was going to play a British lawyer whose father is accused of, guess what, a necktie murder.
Interesting.
And we find out that he's been consorting with prostitutes, or he's accused of being. And so what the Audrey Hepburn character does is take on the persona of a prostitute and invade that underworld.
Interesting.
And that's what was going to be after Psycho. And if that wasn't going to be after Psycho, Marnie was going to be after Psycho with Grace Kelly, because he bought the book, I think it's 61 or early 62, that is Marnie. And and he wanted to do a Mary Rose, the James Barrie ghost story that he'd wanted to do for like 20, 30 years. He wanted to try science fiction. He bought he bought a Frederick Brown, one of my favorite writers.
Oh, me too.
Bought a Frederick Brown, a book called The Mind Thing. And he was going to do The Mind Thing, which is, really, it's the thing.
That would have been amazing.
I had no idea.
This alien takes the form of a bird, and then it takes the form of a child, and then it takes the, and then he had another one. Oh, he had a bunch of them. Oh, yeah, I know. He and Ernie Lehman were going to get back together. This becomes part of my history. He and Ernie Lehman were going to get back together, and after North by Northwest, and do something called Blind Man, which was about a George Shearing kind of jazz pianist. Is it pianist or pianist? Anyway, jazz pianist who's been blind since birth. And he has this radical experimental surgery, and he regains his vision, but he begins to see through the eyes of the killer or that someone is going to kill him.
Okay.
And the big ending, the big climax where his vision comes fully on, was going to take place in the middle of Disneyland.
Wow.
Oh, no way.
So you see what that is. So Walt Disney said, that man who made that terrible movie Psycho will never.
He didn't forbid Hitchcock from going to Disneyland, did he? Can you imagine? All right, any of you employees, if you see Alfred Hitchcock, turn him away. Tell him no.
But let's get back to why Psycho so unhinged Walt Disney. Because it came in the same year as Pollyanna, and it cost so much less and made so much more.
Right.
So
sure.
Let's remember, it's always personal. These things.
The shower scene in Pollyanna is not nearly as good.
No, I mean,
there's some. That's a good movie.
If you say so.
No, it's a beautiful scene. The little crystal thing. Come on.
I'm sorry.
It's
not for me.
No, it's.
Do you not like beauty, sir? Is that what it is? Do you not like shiny little beaded things? Focusing on the wall. Do you not like that? Do you not see the wonder or the magic and majesty in that?
I do not.
Anyway, so
there it is.
So by the time when it came to The Birds, obviously it was very different, but still in the suspense horror, arena.
And that's a film for me that gets better every time I watch it.
Really?
I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
Well, the birds, though, we don't. Why are the birds?
See, Larry has a thing that he is.
I know. I just
upset by the fact that we never find out what exactly caused the birds to do their thing.
Maybe it was some radiation or something that made.
I don't
birds,
need that. That would have been stupid.
No,
you don't need. You don't. I don't need the scientists coming in at the end and explaining everything.
But you have a scientist. You have a
Simon Oakland coming at the end.
Yes, you have someone in. You have someone in Psycho explain to you what happened. Why couldn't I have that in the birds?
That worked for that movie. We don't need birds is a completely different thing.
And I would even say
it's called existential.
I would argue that I don't even necessarily need that scene in Psycho.
Oh, I needed that in Psycho. I needed that.
You maybe didn't, but they did then.
Yes.
Right.
I totally get it. I totally get it. I understand.
I actually like that scene. That's
I love it.
I like it.
Also,
it's
Simon
intense.
Oakland is so good, and he did it in one take.
Oh my God, he's so great. Yeah, it's Vincenzo. Come on.
Yeah.
Right. It's so it's so interesting what people will sort of rag on Hitchcock about, but give other directors a pass. Hitchcock made a movie in London called Stage Fright in about 1950, and
Jane Wyman.
Yeah, Jane Wyman and Marlene Dietrich and Richard Todd, and it dared to have an unreliable narrator, and people just like they're incensed that that some character lies and leads a lot of people to their doom. Oh, but it was okay in The Usual Suspects, right? You were fine with that.
Right.
Oh.
You were fine with that. And here's somebody who did it then in 1950 when they really weren't ready for it.
Right.
No, timing is everything. But I have to say, with The Birds, that ending, that scares me. I mean, it gives me shivers right up my spine. We don't really know why, but we know that this can happen again, and it probably will. And it's just so chilling.
Like, why cancer? Like, why COVID?
Right.
Why when someone, a big public figure commits suicide, do we want to know why?
Right.
How can you? Some things are unknowable. Unknowable. I'm wondering how you guys, since we're talking about The Birds for a moment, I'm wondering how you guys would have reacted if Hitchcock had gotten the money to film the ending that he wanted to end with.
Oh, is that like in Birds Everywhere in the City, whatever? Or
what was
the four characters are driving away out of Bodega Bay, and as they are, they're in a convertible. And people go, why didn't they take Mitch's car? Because it's not cinematic, you dumb fuck. So they're driving in the gorgeous little convertible that I almost wanted to buy 2 years ago anyway. And suddenly we're in the sky again, and the birds start flying down toward the canvas top and start ripping off the canvas top, and it's in shreds as the characters are driving. They find a way to get out of that, and then they get to the Golden Gate Bridge to San Francisco, where it's covered with birds.
Oh, I love that.
Fade out, end of the movie.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay.
Amazing.
It is beautiful, and it's very poetic.
Yeah.
And it's very despairing.
Was it more just budget wise that they couldn't do that?
They spent, they had so much trouble with the birds as it was.
Right.
It was tough to get that to happen. And they were over budget, and they thought it was just, we can't.
Yeah.
Well,
working with birds.
Well, wait a minute.
Let's face it.
Don't work with birds, kids, or any kind of animal.
Look, I'm going to go out on a limb here. Okay. Now, look.
As long as you use your hands to do it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now we all know we've heard some of the stories about Alfred Hitchcock and his obsession with Tippi Hedren, who was in The Birds, and how he either tried to do like sexual advances towards her, and she said no, and he was pissed off. And so in a sequence where she comes in and has these birds kind of attack her, and something that should have taken a day took like a week. Like, suggestion is that he was mad at her, and he kept having, like, instead of fake birds, real birds thrown at her. I mean,
do we know this?
I mean, this isn't. I mean, well. There was what was the film, James? That was kind of like the girl.
The girl, yeah.
That was based on
Toby Jones.
Yeah.
And Sienna Miller.
What's the truth in any of this?
Well, that scene was the shower scene on steroids, because at least with the shower scene, they were getting bits of film that could be controlled by someone raising their hand or a body moving this way. That one, you get that poor girl, and we're on her as those things are coming toward her. Yes. That was in the script from day one. That was always going to be, whether it was mechanical birds, whether it was a mix of, That was not going to be easy for anyone. That's why you didn't get Audrey Hepburn to do that movie.
Right.
It's why, because
Right.
you wouldn't, no star would have put up with that.
Right.
Look, the mechanical birds didn't work. They looked like mechanical birds, although they're one or two of them are in the movie and they don't work.
Right.
There's one that's like a gull that pushes it down and goes, oh.
Right. It's like floating in the air, right?
Yeah, it's like, oh,
right.
Okay, we're in William Castle territory now.
Yeah.
Down.
Skeleton floats by.
I like Tippi Hedren in that movie very much, actually.
Yeah,
me too.
Absolutely.
I think she's particularly good in that scene, which would have been difficult for anybody.
Yeah.
Here's a girl that had basically no experience.
The horror is shocking. It's done very well.
It is. Oh, I love the movie. I really do. I do remember honestly, I have to remember when I have to admit that when I first saw it, I was one of those people that was like, it wasn't Psycho. I was let down, but I wasn't grown up enough. I didn't even know what the movie meant.
Right.
I thought it was about birds. It's not about birds at all. It's really not. That's the
Mr. Literal.
That's the shiny thing that draws me in.
I like shiny things. I thought it was all about
yes,
the freaking title of the film is called Birds.
I have shiny things behind me. I like them. Yeah.
Subtext.
But that's a movie about. I mean, look, Hitchcock at that time was looking at a lot of movies by Antonioni. He was looking at movies, by Alan Rene. He'd never admit it, but he was. I've read his diary, so I know what movies he saw on certain days. And those are movies about people who are not able to communicate. They're about modern people who don't mean what they say, don't say what they mean, and that's what that movie is really about. That when you lie about who you are, when you are not your authentic self, you invite chaos in.
I see.
And it's whether the chaos is disease, many writers and
a catastrophe or
the plague. It's the plague. It's something big and uncontrollable. In this case, it's something really, really cinematic and fabulous.
Surreal. Yeah.
So are you saying
there's some not so nice people in that community?
But
Well, there's so many with like Jessica Tandy, and there's so many strange and awkward relationships with that movie. It's
exactly the point.
Yeah.
Exactly
so you're suggesting that it's like when big tragedies happen, that's when your true self comes out. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Your true self comes out, and you rise to the occasion, or you don't.
Or you don't. Right.
And in the case of Mitch Brenner in The Birds, he does. He starts the movie as a glib, sarcastic, sexist, great-looking, complacent guy who's got, the world by the short hairs. She starts the movie just the way Tallulah Bankhead starts the movie.
Lifeboat. Yeah.
She's in a mink. She's brittle. She's floated around. There's a little references to Roman Holiday and La Dolce Vita and all these movies that Hitchcock was seeing and dealing with. Kathy Brenner is a child, and she tells the truth. She sees what's going on.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Lydia is haunted by the past. She's lost her husband. She's in a world that's not quite here or there. They're all people who are, except for the child, not living in their
truth.
But the one thing
is living for this guy who's moved on.
That's it. The parallel that I appreciate about it, and this is my own little take, which I don't think anybody in the world probably shares, but these are all women. They are all women. And when the Tippi Hedren character comes in, that throws off the entire balance and introduces the whole bird plague. And these are women. And what is British slang for a girl? Bird.
True. That's right.
The birds.
Might have been lost on Hitchcock, but it's not lost on me.
Well, it was lost on me.
You got to get up pretty early in the morning to fool James.
Yeah,
nice, James. I like it.
But Stephen, you have given me.
I will always call it the birds.
But Stephen, you have given me a new way to look at the birds. I still think as they're driving away, perhaps if he just move the camera down, you saw like this giant garbage can, industrial can that was like spilled.
The cheesiest fucking thing ever. It's like a 10-year-old
ever
drive
anything.
No,
Larry.
but Steven has given me a new appreciation.
Yes.
I'm going to rewatch it in a new way. Thank you, Steven.
So open. And when you're done, take a look at some of those other movies that I mentioned. Take a look at Red Desert. Take a look at La Ventura. Those are the movies that Hitchcock was, sort of playing with. You really want to take a deep dive, look at a movie called, believe it or not, Another Time, Another Place with Lana Turner and Sean Connery.
Ooh.
And tell me that Hitchcock didn't see, well, of course he saw the movie because that's one of the reasons he saw Sean Connery.
Right.
But tell me that he didn't borrow some of Melanie Daniels, from that Lana Turner character in that English town where everyone's a little strange. And she's the blonde who shouldn't be there. Anyway,
I'll have to check that one out.
The thing is, Hitchcock saw everything. He digested everything. It's not like he borrowed from people, but he was, he was definitely influenced by people.
Yeah.
One thing I have to say about multiple takes with the birds, I would assume that that's what happened simply because with a movie like that, the possibility of it looking silly is great. And so I would think that you would need a lot of takes, especially working with live birds, to get what you want.
Or artificial ones,
Yeah, or whatever, however you achieve it, because
no one had done that before. No one has really done it.
Another first like that. Yeah. There's one thing about the birds in many of his films, especially in the 50s. I had read that Hitchcock, he liked shooting stuff on the sets. He disliked location shooting a lot, early on at least. And he liked that control and that set bound. And there is an artificiality to his movies, even like things like Vertigo and Rear Window.
The process shots.
Like a movie reality and process shots and effects, and which is interesting because, like I said, I think it has to do with his craft and his having the control to do it. But when I watched Frenzy, I love Frenzy. And Frenzy is to me like so different. It's Hitchcock, but it's almost the opposite of the artificiality. The first shot is that sweeping shot around in London and coming to the bridge and the waterfront. And that movie it's 72. And that movie has such a different feel to me, but in a good way. It's almost like if Hitchcock had lived another 10 years or so, I would love to have seen the movies he made in the 70s, because Frenzy is a dark and disturbing movie. It is exploitive in a lot of ways. I mean, it lingered. There's female nudity in it. I think it's all body doubles, but there's female nudity.
Sure.
There's only one murder you actually see on screen happen, and it's very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
very uncomfortable. But it's got this kind of, I don't know how to describe, like a loose kind of like a British 70s feel. It's like it feels at home with movies like Vincent Price movies, like Theater of Blood and the Dr. Phibes movies, and like with the Scotland Yard is investigating some weird, crazy killings,
and then like a precursor to like Giallo.
Yeah, but it's just like I really enjoy that movie. It seems like he was opening up a new level of creativity, and even in Family Plot too. I mean, that was more comic and dark comic, but it was more natural. I was fascinated by that. And Frenzy is really a cool movie to me, and
I agree with you. I mean, it has a touch of Hammer.
Yes, like late Hammer, like early 70s Hammer.
It also for me has a touch of Peeping Tom. It's in that work. I think he was on the brink of remarkable things. I really mean that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry he got so old and so sick. I mean, the properties he was looking at that time are really interesting. Like he bought or he optioned an Elmore Leonard novel. I mean, just think about that.
Just think of him in the mid 70s making movies. I mean,
exactly. And the thing is, because he had to. Cary Grant was too old, and there were no Grace Kellys, and
right.
You couldn't make a star anymore, as he found out.
Yeah, and Frenzy was filled with a lot of character actors,
really good actors.
Really, yes.
And he was able to go, okay, the Hollywood glamour era is done.
Yes.
The world is different.
Yes.
And actually, I feel like Frenzy is really close or closer to the earlier British movies where he was home. He was
home. Exactly.
Yeah.
He knew that world, but now he was discovering it with new eyes and how that world was changing.
And it was twisted and dark.
Weren't pretty anymore.
Yes.
They weren't perfect. They were flawed.
Right.
So, I mean, look at the way he wanted to cast Family Plot. He wanted Robert De Niro. He wanted, he called it Pacino, but he hated Al Pacino for asking for $1 million, but he wanted Al Pacino to play the cab driver.
Really?
George.
Wow.
And
Wow.
So he was definitely going in new directions. The Unmade movie, Kaleidoscope, was certainly going to thrust in that new direction where he was going to shoot with available light and he was going to use
almost like a Frenzy in a way almost has a little bit of a Kubrick feel to it in a way.
Yeah.
Like
I know what you're saying. You could put it on a double bill with Clockwork Orange and go, these exist in the same universe.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Different obsessions, different concerns,
but the feel.
Right. I think. Did you use the word looseness? Because I like that.
Yeah, there's like a.
It is like the pacing is different. The line readings are a little sloppier. They're a little more natural. But yeah, I think he was going into some really, really interesting places. And look at the writers he was looking at. I mean, he wanted Kaleidoscope written by Edward Albee. He talked with Albee, talked with Lillian Hellman. He talked with
Nabokov.
Nabokov, of course, he did, and he was really, I just think that it was like Psycho. Psycho was a reinvention, and then he didn't know what to do with it. But by the time of the 70s, now I get it. Now I know the kind of movie that I want to make.
Like before that weren't like Torn Curtain and Topaz not necessarily big hits?
Topaz wasn't, but people always say that. But Torn Curtain was really profitable.
Okay,
even though it was too expensive.
Right.
But,
right.
I mean that was a farewell to the
big star, old Hollywood star.
And he had such a terrible time with Julie Andrews, and
really
he had such a terrible time with Paul Newman. It wasn't fun.
The thing is, though, with Torn Curtain, he did have an opportunity, and I find that it's really, really a shame that his tussling with Universal at the time and his unhappiness with the choices that were taken away from him in casting, also I think just demoralizing to the point where he wasn't really trying, because all you needed to do to make Torn Curtain work was put a little rear window in it where you've got the man actually caring about the woman. Would have made it a totally different movie. Paul Newman in it is a stick. Julie Andrews is supposed to be his girlfriend, his fiance. He doesn't show any warmth or affection to her. That's what the movie needed.
But they're both cold. They're both cold performers.
What was the problem that he had with those two actors?
Paul Newman was a really super charming guy, but Hitchcock was very old school. If you were lucky enough to be invited to his house, Alma would make a really beautiful meal, and the silverware everything would be perfect. But, Paul Newman showed up and wanted a beer, and he showed up in a T-shirt.
No.
You don't. I'm sorry, you don't do that with Hitchcock. You just don't.
Yeah.
You don't. You don't sort of rub his nose in it, basically.
Right, right.
I'm really real, so you're gonna have to deal with that.
Right.
No, who needs that? Yeah.
But it's Paul Newman in that movie is utterly charmless.
Well, I don't know that it's completely his fault, though. I think some of it has to do with the writing, and I think Hitchcock, frankly, should have known better by that point. I think he just at that point disassociated himself with it. There are really good things about Torn Curtain.
Yeah, there are.
Unfortunately,
that killing,
that killing is
right up there.
Yes.
And also that classic Hitchcock sense that, okay, now there's a dead body. You're responsible for it. You're on the other side of this curtain.
The idea of
You're going to spend the rest of your life in an East German prison if you get found out, and they're digging up that body now. So the suspense is ratcheted it up. What's not there is the character emotion to make you care about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of script problems, and they spent a lot of time on it. And then finally, they thought they were going to lick them. I mean, it sounds like I'm making an apology, but they thought they were going to lick them, and then they had. It's basically Lou Wasserman said, "Okay, no more Tippi Hedren. Enough. You need to be working with big stars again."
Well, Marnie too. Has been reappreciated now, but was not back then. It was.
Although, if you read it on the internet, I was reading something the other day where people were saying, after the huge success of Torn Curtain and Marnie, or Marnie and Torn Curtain, he could do whatever he wanted. It's like, do you know anything about history?
Was Frenzy a hit?
Yeah, it was very profitable.
Yeah, because I think I remember.
Well, they kept it. He was smart. They kept the budget nice and low, and the actors weren't expensive. But Alec McCallan as the detective is just
great.
Everybody.
It's so perfect.
Billy Whitelaw and Anna Massey. John Finch is great. And John Finch is great because he's his own worst enemy in that movie. He just he keeps stumbling into the worst situations, but. Yeah, and Barry Foster is just genius.
He's terrific. And again, look, Universal wouldn't give him the cast he wanted. He went after Michael Caine.
Really?
He went after Richard Harris, and he went after Vanessa Redgrave and Lynn Redgrave. And you go, that's perfect casting. I get that movie.
It is, but somehow,
you're not getting that money.
Yeah, but somehow, because they aren't huge stars at the time. They just become those characters, that's why it works. It's not a star vehicle,
There's not a bad performance in that movie.
No. So good.
Yeah.
If we could go back to some early Hitchcock movies or earlier Hitchcock movies, one of my favorites, which I know is one of his favorites, is Shadow of a Doubt.
Yes.
Which that was the second movie I saw on the big screen. And that thing blew me away. My mom and dad lived in Santa Rosa. So there, the fact, hey, this is what Santa Rosa used to look like. And and the way that Joseph Cotten insinuates himself into that whole scenario, you think you're going to have your uncle that everybody loves show up and then everything's going to be great. And he's got this secret. And by the time we get to that speech that Joseph Cotten makes about the women, I was like, oh my God, this is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. The jump from charming Uncle Charlie to this. It just hits you in the stomach.
It's from 1943 with Teresa Wright and Joseph Cotten.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry, I keep doing this, but it was supposed to be Olivia de Havilland.
Is that right?
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Shadow of a Doubt. Maybe I could watch it right now. Let's watch it.
Yes.
It's an incredible movie, and I understand why David Lynch loves it. I understand why it was one of the well springs for Twin Peaks. It's all there. The small town.
The humor works. The terror works.
Great.
Joseph Cotten's amazing.
The chemistry.
And the heartbreak of
my gosh,
the aunt who is again so in the world of the past, and when he was a beautiful little boy who's had beautiful long hair that his mother didn't want to cut, and the thing is, it's what Torn Curtain lacks. It's all about feeling. People's emotions. And Teresa Wright, that's a performance for the ages. It's a great movie. That was a great experience for him. Hitchcock working with Thornton Wilder, who a gay man who understood what it was like to be an outsider, who could write for Charlie. Uncle Charlie, in a way that is so strong and so and so frightening and so like an Uncle Charlie that I knew.
Really?
I think there's the thing about the Hitchcock movies that I love best. They give you the feeling where you're not looking at other people, you're looking at a mirror, or you're looking at people that they're riding on the train with you, or that you're stuck in traffic and you look over in somebody's car, and I do this all the time. And I go, what is this? I'm a writer. I mean, what is it?
Right.
What's going on with them? Yeah.
What is happening with them? Why is that man pushing on his horn again and again? Why is that guy cutting in front of me? How
that's why that Thornton Wilder touch, it's like almost like the flip side of Our Town.
Yeah, well, Our Town has a real darkness too. But I know what you're saying. Thornton Wilder was a master. I mean, you read the Matchmaker and you go, wow, they made Hello Dolly out of that. But the Matchmaker has such beautiful speeches about grief and Ephraim, let me go. I mean, I can never listen to the speech that Dolly talks about getting back to life again. But when I hear that speech, I think of the character that what is her name? I'm forgetting the actress's name. Not Teresa Wright, obviously, the older woman. It's beyond empathy. It's just a feeling for human.
Yeah, cutting to the bone, kind of.
Yeah, cutting to the bone. And I guess I really like best, because Frenzy has it too. I guess it's closest to the Hitchcock that I knew in a really peripheral way, and maybe knew through other people. And that he didn't have a really profound sense of faith in human nature. I think he thought that people were beyond fallible. They were in many ways despicable and cruel. I find that's often Hitchcock was a big animal lover, and I find that somehow often goes together. That the people who have that kind of feeling about cruelty to animals. I mean, speaking of early Hitchcock, have you guys seen? I hope you have Secret Agent, in which there is a dog. Well, you have to look beyond Marnie. I mean, the feeling that Hitchcock clearly has, and it's conveyed through Tippi Hedren for the horse and shooting the horse. It's heartrending.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Heartrending. If you've ever lost an animal that you loved, there it is. And in this spy thriller in the middle of Secret Agent, there is a faithful dog, and a door is closed, and behind that door, that dog's master is being tortured and killed, and the dog is screaming and crying, and Hitchcock holds on the dog. Again, it's that feeling that for the Joan Fontaine character in Rebecca, that there are always people, and there are always creatures who will get eaten, beaten, dominated by, destroyed by other forces, and
the short end of the stick.
And I never see. That's why I never understand why some people say that Hitchcock's movies are so they're so mathematical and they're so thought out as opposed to felt out. And you can't be seeing the same movie I am.
Oh no! I not long ago watched The Wrong Man again, there's that scene when Henry Fonda is going into that cell for the first time.
Oh man!
And you were there.
Yeah.
In that film and in a number of other Hitchcock films, a common theme is that of being wrongly accused. And I wonder, did that come from a place in Hitchcock's head where personally and artistically, he often felt wrongly accused?
I mean, I think, I hate to keep harping on this, but I think he had a tremendous feeling for people who, get a free pass in life because they look a certain way.
Right.
When I met him in his office, it was pretty remarkable. I mean, one of the things that he said to me immediately is he said, if I were to film you, here's how I would do it. Here's how I would dress you. Here's how the camera would be. Here are the features that you have that are not good. Here are the features that you have that are good. But
wow, that's amazing.
But his thought immediately was, how can I make you look better? He did that with everyone.
Yeah.
When Sean Connery showed up for Marnie, he said, that wig is not going to do. I'm going to give you a new one. It's going to have you're going to look like the devil. Your hair is very right. Do this with your eyebrows. All your clothes will be bespoke. That's really the way he was. I think he had a sense of injustice.
Yeah.
Back to your point, that life is not fair. That certain people
or that
for
you
whatever
can
reason, skate through and others don't.
I tell myself that every day.
But even like things like people being stuck in situations they can't control or being helpless. Rear Window, of course, is another such a great movie for me. And, when James Stewart is watching Grace Kelly across the way and, oh my God, to get out of there. It's
when she's gone into the guy's apartment and it's like, you can't do anything.
And it's so good. I mean,
and the dog, we were talking dogs.
That's right. The dog. Yeah.
Don't get me started.
It's
but again, as we were talking about before, that moment is so delicious because Grace Kelly plays it so beautifully. It's shot so beautifully. James Stewart bats it out of the park. Yes. But it's a moment in which that character realizes what he's done to that woman.
Right. Yes. Right. It's his.
So it's such a whammy. It's such a whammy.
God, it's a double whammy. Yeah.
Satisfying.
And on a side note, the way that he shoots Grace Kelly in that film, he's like an otherworldly creature. He's like an angel from heaven.
I know. She really is.
That coming toward the camera, coming toward James Stewart, coming toward us.
Yes.
I know. It's amazing.
She's astonishing looking.
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's like, that can't be real.
Yeah.
Someone can't be that perfect. And it makes it so beautiful because how can he not see her? In Vertigo, you think, how can he not see or hear Barbara Bel Geddes? How can he not hear that cry from that woman's heart?
Right. Because
I remember seeing Marnie with my mother, and it was the first time. It was the first time she'd seen. I know. We didn't know what was going to.
Okay.
I've experienced a couple. We're gonna see another.
It's like, hey, we're gonna see another Psycho.
Yeah. I saw Shivers with my mom.
That was sort of cringy, but anyway. But the silly point, she couldn't get behind Tippi Hedren's character, and I said, why? Are you looking at him? He was like, come on. And it's funny because I think Tippi Hedren actually said something like that to Hitchcock, which is delightful and charming, that he said something like to Hitchcock that, I'm supposed to be frigid. How am I going to make the audience believe that? And he was like, have you seen him? And he said, or she said, he said, well, we call it acting, my dear. It's true, but I think that Hitchcock did sometimes paint himself into some corners that audiences had a hard time with. For example, an early movie, I Confess, where you have Montgomery Clift, who is a priest, a Catholic priest, and he knows who killed someone, but his vows make it. The audience is like, just tell them. You know what I mean? And the movie, just tell them. And that, I guess, for some people that is tough. That was a bridge too far. Save yourself.
Yeah.
Look, Hitchcock loved Dickens. He loved Dickens, and who had more of a sense of social outrage about the nuts than Dickens? And he had that same sort of feeling for those who got the shorter end of the stick, and whether it's financially, looks wise, intellectually, and all. I think he has a tremendous empathy for the out of step, and I think that's why that he had a tremendous empathy for Anthony Perkins as a person and as a man playing a very difficult role. That he knew he was bisexual or gay. I mean, just as he knew Farley Granger was, and he worked with a lot of gay actors. And I think he told Ernie Lehman that, I think if I hadn't met Alma, I might have been gay, which I always thought was
really
interesting. Wow. That's a big deal for a man. Period. For a man, especially.
Wow.
To say, he loved Ernie, so that he loved him as a writer. They didn't like each other as people, but they loved each other as creative people. But I think he had tremendous sympathy for women too. In that, when people fix, I was watching this NBC thing, a parody of musical called Schmigadoon.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
It has
Yeah, I've
nothing to
heard
do.
of that.
It has nothing to do with anything Hitchcockian except this last episode. And you'll see why I'm bringing it up. The last episode, they had a character coming in, and she's obviously supposed to be like the character that Eleanor Parker plays in The Sound of Music. You know, the Countess or Baroness or whatever she is. You know, very elegant and regal and all of this stuff. And this character is playing the same thing. And it's like out of nowhere, this character says, "You're so blonde and beautiful." It's like Hitchcock would come out of the grave just to torture you. And I thought, what? I mean, we all know what that's referencing.
Right.
Like, have you ever watched his movies? I mean, and how heroic,
Right.
how heroic and smart a lot of the women are in his movies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Or
So
the
many
fact
great
that he-
roles.
That's right. Or the fact that he surrounded himself with brilliant women. His wife,
His wife, yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Joan, Peggy, all the women that worked around him were always, and it was never kind of the pecking order was him and then the others quite low. It wasn't like that with them.
Right.
He respected that they were smart and they were, sophisticated. They had better ideas than he did sometimes, and he took them. So I don't buy them. I understand the misogynistic crap, but I have a difficulty with presentism. Really, I don't think that you can look at Notorious, for example, and go, why are they slut shaming her?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of,
You know what I mean? Why are they
yeah.
slut shaming Ingrid Bergman's character because she likes to drink and sleep around? So does Cary Grant's character. I get that. I get that. I totally understand that. It's the 40s. It's not
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Every movie is to a point a product of its time. I mean, yeah.
But in Notorious, I didn't get the feeling that Hitchcock was slut shaming her. She was the heroine, and she was a strong, independent woman. I mean,
I'm right with you.
Views
obviously.
of her.
But there are contemporary reviews of her.
There you go.
Right. Oh, right.
Like, how dare they? And that just proves what a jerk Hitchcock was and how predatory he was toward women. Yeah, like no, how about the numbers of Hitchcock movies that these women and men are, slamming that are written by women. So there's just this grand conspiracy in every decade, that Hitchcock was always torturing the female character. Well, that's what happens in suspense movies.
True.
Yes.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like
called drama.
It's a trope. It's part of the thing.
There are victims.
I think he tortured more than his share of men. More men than women were probably tortured in Hitchcock movies if you're going to take
Don't
counts.
you think?
Right.
True.
I mean, how come Rod Taylor never went, to the press talking about how his hand was chewed by a seagull? That seagull wasn't kidding in The Birds. That was not a fake bird.
Right.
He had scars on his hands from
Wow.
that.
Wow.
He didn't go, "Oh, cruelty. He must hate me because I'm Australian."
I can no longer hand model.
That's right.
I'm so glad that you mentioned his wife Alma. I'm one of the people who, I kind of grew up thinking this is an Alfred Hitchcock film. Alfred Hitchcock is this great guy. But when he got his AFI Lifetime Achievement Award back in '79, he actually went to great lengths to say, he said, there are 4 people who have given me the most appreciation and encouragement and constant collaboration. The first of the 4 is a great editor. The second is a screenwriter. The third is the mother of my daughter. And the fourth is a fine cook. All 4 of them were Alma. And there's a great line in the Hitchcock film where Alma is kind of fixing a bit of the script of Psycho. And it's Peggy who says, your name should be on the script too. And Alma says, you know what? The people who need to know are the only ones that need to know. And what I'm hoping is that people will acknowledge Hitchcock's wife, Alma, as someone who did bring a lot to all these films. Yes, he was great, but he had help, a lot of help from his wife, who was brilliant in her own right. And sometimes I feel like she's gone off into obscurity, and I like the fact that you've brought her up because I think she helped him a lot.
Well, it was my insistence in the movie Hitchcock that Alma take a bow and that someone like Helen Mirren play her. Yeah. I remember there was another director who was going to do the movie, and I remember getting a call around Christmas, and I had guests coming, and I was cooking like Alma, and in fact, I was using one of her recipes. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. I was anyway. So I got a call from this director who was going to do the movie, and he said, "We need a scene where Alma tells him what it's like to be Alma when you're not Alfred Hitchcock." And I said, "I know that scene. I lived that scene in a family situation." And 35 minutes later, I emailed the scene to him, and he said, "This is the scene that the actress who, at the time he was thinking of Meryl Streep, but anyway, he said, this is the scene that's going to define this character for the audience." And it's literally unchanged. I mean, I've shown people the pages as I wrote them, and it's virtually unchanged. It just came out of me in a rush, and it was everything that I wanted to say about a relationship that I had in my family, and it was everything that I was able to say about Alma and what it's like to live in someone else's shadow. Now, the truth of it is that the dramatic truth of that scene is real. The literal truth is that Alma constantly avoided the limelight. She talked about having an experience where it was some very, very famous king or prince was being paraded through the streets in London. She was a little girl. She was very tiny, very, very tiny. And she was a little girl, and this great personage was coming by, and there were mobs and mobs of people. The sidewalks were jammed. And suddenly she got pulled away by the crowd. And it was so traumatic for her that she said that's what it felt like when people said, "Oh, your name should be on." Well, you know, her name is on a lot of the movies as a contributor to the screenplay. But you should direct. She didn't want to direct. She didn't want to be that. She wanted to be part of the Hitchcock name. When you see Torn Curtain, when Julie Andrews and Paul Newman, when he yells fire in the theater and they start getting pulled apart, that's Alma. That's what happened to her in that crowd. As you see Julie Andrews pulled away by the crowd, that's what it felt like to be Alma. And so they put that in. Nobody knows that except now you guys. But that's where that came from. That Alma's experience that she related to Brian Moore, screenwriter, and Hitchcock himself, are part of what informed that scene. That moment in the movie. And so my name is not on this listed as a screenwriter for Hitchcock, by the way. However, I will say that when I saw the first preview of the movie, and Helen Mirren played that scene in the bedroom of Hitchcock saying this, there was such applause in the audience. I want everyone in the world to have an experience like that, because I remember what I was doing. And by the way, the Christmas meal turned out great. I emailed it to him, and then I killed Christmas dinner too. That's what it must have been like for Alma, in a way.
Right.
When you're cooking and you're writing and you're cooking when you're writing. Right. It was a tremendously wonderful feeling to have, and Helen Mirren, of course, batted it way out of the park.
She's amazing.
But the audience, that audience response is like it was so addictive. It was just so addictive.
It's a very powerful speech that she gives. That's just great.
Thanks. And then there were people who came up to me later and said, I read your script. Why didn't they film all of that? Why didn't they film all, and then we get into a whole other thing. Yeah. But the point of it is that, you get as much of it as you can. But when you're able to speak your truth, and voice something that's really deep in you, I felt that I'd connected somehow to Alma. I hope I did. And I hope that I gave her voice that she didn't always, she always deserved it and always rated it, but she didn't always want it. I felt when I was writing it, like, I hope I'm not betraying her, because she wasn't the kind of person that wanted that. She wanted him to have the glory.
Right.
Anyway.
It's nice.
So you see how these things sort of all interconnect. I mean, we didn't talk about the fact that when I was a little boy, I used to call Hitchcock on the phone and he'd take the call. So,
nice.
So, our lives went in really, strange.
That's crazy.
Strange. Wow. I didn't know that you couldn't. You see, I was the kind of family, the kind of family I was brought up in, and the time that I grew up in. I picked up the phone and he was at Universal. How difficult could it be? I didn't even, to me, it was like, it was Alfred Hitchcock. It wasn't like a small thing, but it's really terrible.
You just didn't imagine that barrier.
I'm not, I'm really not an egocentric person, but I hope you understand when I say, what I mean when I say this. I didn't feel that it was a wrong thing to do or that I had no right to do it.
Right.
All I did. And look, it never should have happened because all I did was call the office and he picked up because they'd gotten one of those new, then new push button phone things.
Sure.
And he didn't know how it worked. And so we had a conversation.
Awesome.
we had a couple of.
And you're calling, but you're calling out of love. You're calling
love and
admiration and respect,
and some knowledge too, and some.
Stephen, you did interview him later on.
I did.
This is towards his autumn years in a way. Did he ever say to you, like looking back, like he was nominated for an Academy Award, never won. He's done all these amazing films. Did he have any resentment towards Hollywood or the Hollywood brass or
deep?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had deep resentment and deep hurt. I don't think he thought that they ever realized or were able to acknowledge how good he was.
Right.
He was a big personality. He wasn't an easy person to be around. He wasn't Frank Capra. Didn't have that kind of charm.
No.
And so he never had that popularity that, gets you, most athletic in high school or best looking. Hollywood and the Academy at that time, especially, it was the studio system. So everyone in the studio voted for whatever big movie the studio made that year. But Hitchcock didn't curry favor with people. He and Alma stayed home. They weren't, they go to Chasen's on Friday nights, sometimes more, often. But they weren't gadabouts. He felt awkward. He maybe was on the spectrum. I don't know, but he could have been. But all I know is that he didn't have an easy time in the world. And he felt that he had earned the praise of and should have gotten the praise of Hollywood. But he felt that because of the genre, as he used to say, genre, he made it like 7 syllables, that he worked in, it was, and it still is considered kind of a bastard, it's not important, Gandhi is an important movie.
Right.
Infuriates me.
Yeah, I know.
Constantly infuriates me.
Yeah, especially with us, with the the genres that we love, especially, they often don't get the credit or the admiration.
And yet those are the films that quite often comment the deepest on the human condition.
Yeah.
Well, that's why
the influence.
That's right. But people confuse the container for the content.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a great question. Yeah, he used to joke, and he said it to me, with the Academy. It's an old expression, but he was adorable when he said it. Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. But but he deeply, deeply felt that he'd done good work. In certain films, he'd really laid it on the line. He thought Lifeboat was a really important movie that said a lot of important things about empathy, lack of empathy.
Class.
It is. It's a great
Lifeboat's great. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And a little, skirting controversy with the portrayal of the U-boat captain. And
right.
He was very proud of that. He was extraordinarily proud of Shadow of a Doubt, as he should be. He thought really Shadow of a Doubt had so many important, in the container again of this, small town thriller. It had
little film noir thriller. Yeah.
Yeah. But it had so many important things to say about the human condition. And he was obsessed with class, and he felt that he was really, and British people, especially of that time, really felt the boot of the upper class when they were if you weren't of that, if you weren't to that manner born. So he he understood that. I mean, it's like, and you feel, I mean, you even see it in Marnie, where, where the Diane Baker character wants to embarrass her because she assumes that she won't know how to pour tea properly. That's a small thing, but that kind of detail.
So cutting, though, yeah.
It is. It is so. It is so cutting. Or, I love Tippi Hedren's line in the delivery where Mark Rutland says to her, what'll become of you? What are you going to do with your life when we go back home? And she says, I, of course, thought I'd become a society hostess. Well, it's a small sort of Jean Kerr kind of witticism, but it is also, it gets you right back to Rebecca. I don't know how to live this life. My mother was a prostitute in Baltimore. You know what I mean? The veneer of what I look like and how I dress, that's all acquired. That's Hitchcock. That's the cry from his heart.
Right.
I don't think of myself as someone who's, extraordinarily sensitive or brighter than anyone. But I fail to see how anyone can see these movies and not feel these undercurrents.
The body of his work, I mean, from the silent era into the 70s, I mean, it's pretty incredible. And his influence on Hollywood and other filmmakers, of course, is just like, people always say that, they use the word Hitchcockian and all that. Yes. And like the name Alfred Hitchcock, like, he's simply one of the most influential filmmakers ever, period.
Yeah.
I mean, and his work is like, you can just go back again and again.
Always fresh.
There's so many titles and so many
just great stories. Is Vertigo. When Vertigo had been missing or it hadn't been in distribution for years. Finally, I got to see it. I was in film school. My expectations were high. Frankly, I mean, I walked out of there frustrated and bitterly disappointed. I was like, what is all the fuss about? Now it's my very favorite movie. And I've seen it, I can't tell you how many times, but it was so personal to him. And there is I guess when you interviewed Stefano, he told you that he told Hitch that he thought it was Hitch's best film. And it brought him to near tears to hear that because it was not successful. It broke even, right?
Right.
Nobody got it. Apparently, nobody got it. I didn't get it either because it had nothing to do with the context of it. It's one of the very few films I think I will ever see where it's entirely subtext. It's all what's under the surface.
Yeah,
it blows my mind, and it's an enriching experience in a different way every single time I see it.
And it's not experimental too.
It's
in a
an
lot of
onion.
ways,
Yeah.
It's so fun to be in a smart room. I don't have to explain anything to anybody. I'll get the same references, and you're all sober.
Well,
for the moment. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I've seen some shows where you guys were rip roaring. I thought, oh boy,
we pace ourselves.
Yes.
Topic depending.
We had to be on our game for this one.
Exactly. Yes. Right.
I don't know about that, but.
Well, guys, this has really been great. I mean,
it has been
amazing,
delightful.
This is Stephen. You've been absolutely wonderful.
It makes me like want to watch all his movies again.
Well, it really does. It really does.
I'm going to watch The Birds again in a different way.
You really should.
Well, when I listen to you, I'm not going to pay attention. But Steve's the expert, and he is giving me something new.
All right, fair enough.
I'm going to look at this.
My work is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you guys. I had a really good work day today, so this is a nice papper to that day. I'm working on 2 book proposals. One is fiction, the other is nonfiction. The fiction one is in the world of Hitchcock. It's not about Hitchcock, but it is in the underneath of Hitchcock. I'll just leave it at that. And so that's a lot of fun. The book that I did on Valley of the Dolls, which I approached, the same sort of scholarliness and seriousness and snarky sense of humor that I did with Hitchcock and the Making of Psycho, is, there's a lot of talk around town about it having a life as in a filmed medium.
I'd love to see that.
It was a very big company and very, very big people. So that's been fun. And So, I just never stop. I wished I'd been able to do the book on North by Northwest, and the other one I planned to do was Rear Window, but it's just untenable. When those people are gone,
they're gone.
Yeah. True.
So it's been a delight. I've really enjoyed it, and
you've been awesome, man.
You're the greatest.
This was wonderful.
Well,
Judy Garland used to say, "Ask me back."
I would love to.
Sure, we certainly will.
We will.
So I would like to raise my glass. Would you guys like to raise your glass? And
Yes,
I would like to
please.
toast Steve REBELLO and Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense.
Dun, 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 dun.
Good evening. Time for a listener shout out.
Shout out! New era shout out!
We have
201!
we have an
201. Sorry.
we have an international review from Down Under.
Oh,
How you doing down there, mate?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You might have a clue who it's from. It's from longtime listener Chai Titkum.
Chai Titkum.
Yes.
Sent us gifts and messages before, and now a review. 5 years on, whilst listening to a recent episode, I realized that I've been listening to the Monster Party podcast for about 5 years.
Nice.
So what's changed over the past 5 years? In short, not much.
Yeah, we don't grow. We don't grow at all. We learn very little.
There's no new leaves being turned over.
I was going to say, I turned over a new leaf.
Yeah, but
Come
then you
on.
turn it back over again. So it's now in the original side.
Right.
The podcast is still freaking awesome. Extremely informative and side-splittingly funny, especially listening to Larry tell stories about working at Toys R Us.
I've got a lot more, man.
I
got a lot more.
Yeah.
Even with the recent COVID restrictions, the quality of the show hasn't dropped much at all.
Nice.
Not much.
Much.
How about at all? Come on.
We're just joshing you, Jai.
The Aussies tell it like it is.
That's true. Yes.
Matt, Sean, James, and the
I can't say his name either. It's like saying Candyman.
Yeah, don't say Larry 3 times in the
bad things will happen.
I'll show him with a Mitched box
You'll be
toy.
stuck in a box.
You'll turn into a clown.
Matt, Sean, James, and the ever hilarious Larry still bounce off each other like encyclopedic pinballs. The guests and the topics are still up to the same high or drunk standard as ever.
Nice.
Like everyone in the world, the last 12 to 18 months have been tough at times. Knowing that there will be a new 2 to 3 hour episode of Monster Party soon is a ray of sunshine in an otherwise bleak world. It's like a little island of sanity in a sea of madness. I'm very much looking forward to the next 5 years. Hopefully we can get Larry to drop a gummy bear and open his Godzilla toy that he promised us.
Yes. And by the way, Larry's stripping name is Sea of Madness.
I did not know I had a stripping name, Matt.
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you.
No,
Thank
I've
you very
signed you up
much for that
That's
information.
awesome.
You go on Wednesday.
Cheers and thanks for all the laughs, guys. Jai Titkum, Queensland, Australia. Thank you, Jai.
Oh, Jai, thank you so much.
Thanks, buddy.
Good day, mate.
Oh, you had to. Really?
You can cut
Hey,
that. Cut
you
that.
No.
Hey, you know, guys, I just want to go out on a limb here. You know, the one thing that Jai brings up, look, nothing has changed or something. Let me tell you something. What I do like about us is if we make a mistake, we will acknowledge it and we learn from it. Right?
Where's this going?
Yes. Well, okay. When we did our superheroes episode,
right?
This was Marvel, DC, and Beyond.
Yes, I've heard of them.
Okay, maybe I had a little too much of the booze,
Okay.
but I actually said Ryan Gosling when I meant to say Ryan Reynolds.
Okay.
So I
Green Lantern?
apologize.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Wow.
I'm so and I'm hoping those listeners at home
Ryan Gosling's pissed off you now.
I love. He's great, but he wasn't.
They're both pissed off at you for different reasons.
Well, I'm just saying that's what I meant to say, and I'm calling myself out on it.
Wasn't the Green Lantern movie? Didn't it have enough trouble? Now you're confusing.
Yeah, wow.
Star.
You just keep bringing the hurt to that film.
Sean, I'm trying to say that I meant to say Ryan Reynolds and also that Scott Thompson, if you remember, had a big thing for Ryan Reynolds, and I felt bad that I didn't acknowledge Ryan Reynolds, so I'm acknowledging that I meant to say Ryan
you may
Reynolds
have saved his career.
However, Ryan Gosling is wonderful, and
he's no slouch.
No, I mean, La La Land. Come on, I love it. Not a superhero film, but anyway,
a zero.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to apologize
save it for the La La Land episode.
And listeners, if you hear me say something that is a little off, I'm a little
right in immediately.
Just
the next apology is going to be what, 3 to 4 hours? Read it from a scroll.
There you go.
And I've got a couple shout outs. First, my good buddy and friend of the show, Chris Mancini, is releasing Rise of the Kung Fu Dragon Master Volume 2, a 100-page graphic novel follow-up to Volume 1, which was just completed following a successful Kickstarter campaign. It's the follow-up project to writer Chris and artist Fernando Pinto's first graphic novel together, Long Ago and Far Away. Rise of the Kung Fu Dragon Master is a comedy, action, fantasy graphic novel about Rick, a small-time crook in Los Angeles who becomes an unlikely hero in a mystical battle between good and evil that has been fought since the days of ancient China. It's a love letter to 80s action, buddy, and comedy movies Chris grew up on. Along with some powerful life lessons, the book features epic martial arts fights, fantastic creatures, and surly baristas. Backers of this Kickstarter campaign can score all sorts of cool digital and physical rewards, including the entire Mancini Pinto digital library, including 500 pages of content and getting drawn into the book and being listed in the Temple of the Dragon. Add-ons include Rise of the Kung Fu Dragon Master Volume 1 and Long Ago and Far Away for new backers. The goal is $8,000, the same as Volume 1, which was successfully funded. The Rise of the Kung Fu Dragon Master Volume 2 Kickstarter campaign ends September 5th. So get to it, folks. And if that were not enough exciting entertainment news, another great pal and friend of the show, comedian and actor Rick Overton's new comedy special is available for viewing. It's called Rick Overton's Set List, and it features Rick improvising an entire comedy set based on topics he's never seen before. I was in the audience for this show, and I can guarantee you that this performance is nothing short of genius. To check out this amazing event, you can find it on Amazon Prime, YouTube, and at comedydynamics.com. Let Rick Overton turn your pandemic frown upside down.
Let's also remind our listeners that Monster Party merch is still available on our Monster Party eBay store, which is called, you guessed it, Monster Party Store. We still have the classic Monster Party glow-in-the-dark logo t-shirts available in various sizes. And the cloth Monster Party PPE mask, because you still got to be careful out there.
Oh, yes, you do.
Yeah, we can wear it while you're taking a shower at a motel or something.
Wear it all day long, every day.
That's right.
Stay safe.
And these masks, they're good for different things. Sometimes you walk into a thrift store and it's got a funky smell. You'd be happy you're wearing a cloth mask. Sometimes you walk into places like, oh shit, what's that? So these masks are
I put it over my eyes. I don't want to see half the stuff that I see.
Wear it over your ears and your nose.
No, you know that saying, you can't unsee this?
Okay.
The answer to that is not to see it.
Yes.
Put it over your eyes.
But it's still available, isn't it, James?
It is still available, and shipping, believe it or not, is absolutely free.
Still.
That's psycho, man.
That statement just gave me vertigo. People are in a frenzy.
We're just notorious.
This deal.
Guys, just stop.
You're just spellbound about it.
Oh my God. God.
A foreign correspondent would.
Somebody tore my curtain behind me.
Okay. We're stretching it a little bit here. We're stretching.
Larry, I confess, we were stretching it a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait to tell my lodger about this.
Let me get a room.
Is there something else you got to say here?
Well, if you happen to be a Monster Party Patreon member, you will also get special surprise goodies courtesy of Jason Lindsay, Biff Bang Pow Toys, and our friend Ted Haynes, creature creator extraordinaire.
Yes.
Sweet stuff.
But this Patreon, what is that all about?
Patreon is a platform that if you sign up for it, you will have access to bonus audio, bonus video, book downloads, and other wonderful treats provided to you by us, the Monster Party crew.
Like videos, like what, perhaps?
For example, you could have access to Larry Stroth's Patreon exclusive show, Larry's Toy Time.
Oh, fun.
And the Monster Party movie masterpiece.
Oh,
where you get to see our films. And the first one that we did is one by Larry Stroth that I enjoyed very much.
Yes.
Why, thank you, Matt.
I did, yes.
And it stars a very young Larry Stroth.
Who you know what? And all kidding aside, I said it last time, but I have to say it again. He's very good in it.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, kind of like a John Gavin-esque kind of.
Yeah, very John Gavin.
But you can only.
Stiff but sensual.
Yes, but you can only see it where?
On Monster Party's Patreon page.
And it sounds very expensive.
It's not. It's only $5.
You're kidding.
$5, yeah.
You can buy a necktie for that.
You never know when you're going to need them.
Oh, good Lord.
That's what we need to start selling is the Monster Party necktie.
I'm working on it.
Okay. All right, good.
And let's remind our listeners that you can find us on Facebook and YouTube at Monster Party TV, our Twitter handle at Monster Party HQ, Instagram, also Monster Party HQ. And hey, no matter what corner of the world you're listening to us on, please take a moment and write a review. We will seek it out. And if we find it, we will read it on the air.
And we will read it in the character of Norma Bates. On that note, I am Matt Weinhold.
I'm Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James GONIS.
Keep America strong.
Watch Alfred Hitchcock films.
Preferably with your mother.
A boy's best friend is his mother.
Okay.
See, that means that we're recording in progress.
All right. Now I know.
Yeah. And so what we normally do is if, we use some of this little banter in the beginning to put at the end as like a little bonus audio feature.
Okay. I don't know if I've done enough bantering, but.
Well, no, this is going to, from this point on, it's going to be
this is
banter
peanuts.
This is the show. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So how's your day been going?
Look at those shelves.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at those.
We all have collections.
Yes.
Shawn Sheridan.
Oh, do you have to turn the camera to brag? Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
My name is spelled wrong. My name is spelled wrong. I don't.
Wait,
it is?
Oh, on your Zoom thing?
On your Zoom?
Yeah.
Well, that's not my fault. Thank God.
How did that happen?
We'll make sure it's spelled right when we post it.
No
Zoom's
fingers
fault.
were pointed at you. I was pointing at myself.
And
that's
Steve,
incredible. Is that
Steve,
a
it's
closet
just
or a
audio.
room?
What's that?
Is that a room or a closet?
That's my little closet I'm stuck in with my toy. No, it's a room.
This is our studio.
It's a whole room.
Oh,
And, yeah, it's
that's kind of heavenly.
It is.
Oh,
I would
it
go
is.
in
Yeah,
there.
we finally had a room to put everything.
Nice.
We're we all share a certain sickness.
Yeah,
Indeed.
I call it a passion. Passion.
true.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Hey, Sarah.
Could you,
Oh,
could you sing?
We're
Can you
going
sing?
deep into history.
Oh, no, yeah, we're
Could
going
you
there.
sing it
We're going
louder,
there.
please? Can you sing it a little louder, though? Could you?
I could never, do Doris justice.
I saw that movie. My parents, I think that was the first Hitchcock movie I ever saw. My parents,
No.
it was brought back to, I grew up in Massachusetts, and there were really good drive-in theaters there. And my parents took me to, I don't know what the other feature was, but I didn't care. But my mom looked a little like Doris Day. My dad looked a little like James Stewart because he was sort of tall and gangly and he had a stammer. And I was a singer as a kid, and so that was not a movie. That was like my life.
No.
Yeah. So it was like I didn't experience that at all as a what I understood as a movie at that time. I thought, this is me and my parents, and we went to the wrong cool country. And I did the wrong thing, which I often did as a kid because I was very precocious. I'm really good friends with the grown-up version of the kid who plays.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And we have these really wonderful discussions about what it was like for him with his mom on the set and working with Hitchcock, and what Hitchcock thought about kids and what Hitchcock thought about him in particular as a kid. But we didn't grow up looking anything like each other. But I really, but anyway, my point is that I really identified with that movie as a kid. So
That's cool.
It's like they plucked it from your head and put it on screen.
Yeah, kind of. Notice I have a Psycho window card behind me.
Nice.
Wait, is that an original, sir? Is that an original?
You think you're dealing with a schlepper here? Of course it's original.
Wow.
And
way to go,
and that's an original Rear Window, because we all have that sickness, don't we?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Oh,
Thanks for insulting the guest right out of the gate.
Hey,
okay.
Hey,
That's all right.
It's me. Come
I
on.
expect it's going to be one of many.
You've listened to the show then.
Yes.
Yes, I have.
Okay. Well, Stephen, again, we're so glad that you're with us tonight. If you've listened to the show, just to let you know that the way we start it is Matt introduces the show, and then we introduce ourselves, say what the topic is, and then we introduce our guests, and that's when we go to town. Okay. Just to give you just a basic idea here. And you know what the topic is, right?
No
Stanley
idea.
Kubrick.
I can talk about anything. So my agent, and my manager insisted that I listen to more of the shows than I already had. And they said, make sure you know what you're getting into. And I was, no.
Well, that's good advice.
I usually say no to this stuff, but I thought these guys are nuts, and I did it. So yeah, I mean, I'm all excited.
Well, we're on.
I feel like I'm on the celebrity dating game. So.
Like a weird, twisted version of that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's pretty twisted. Have you seen it?
That's true.
Have you seen it with Michael Bolton and from Outer Space? You have to see the show.
Michael.
Wow.
Bolton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey, he's a very talented musician, though.
Hey, you know what? Whatever floats your boat.
I'm not knocking him, but they actually have him singing a song about the mystery person who's trying to date.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Is it
sounds like some 70s variety show or something.
And it is, and Zoe Deschanel is the host.
Okay, well, wait a minute.
Okay.
Hold back up.
That could work.
Yum yum.
Yeah, well, you need to see it, and we'll compare notes once you've seen it, and see if your crush remains a crush.
Okay.
Well, that is wonderful. But tonight's topic is on Alfred Hitchcock.
Zoe Deschanel,
no, Alfred Hitchcock. Now, and Matt, should we call it Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense?
If you want, I don't know.
The legacy of Alfred Hitchcock, the films of Alfred Hitchcock.
Well, they call him the master.
Normally, when we do something like this, it's Alfred Hitchcock. We just say Alfred Hitchcock,
or just Hitchcock, because you don't even need. I mean, it's
no,
but it could be about Robin Hitchcock.
See,
it
could be
about Robin Hitchcock.
There are listeners
out about storefront Hitchcock tonight.
There may be listeners out there. Maybe listeners out there who are not familiar
with Alfred Hitchcock.
Yes. So I think.
Well, then they're dead to me.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm just
to
saying.
listen to this podcast, I think.
I don't want to know him.
Yeah.
No,
Well,
I don't want to.
you
I don't
know what?
need those
Yeah.
people in my life.
Hey, Steve, do you ever find this? Like you meet some of the young kids, and if you say something like, "Hey, Alfred Hitchcock or Doris Day," and they're like, "Who is that? I don't know who that is."
Well, all the time.
Yeah.
So I avoid them.
Well, I'm just saying, for the kids who listen, we just. That's why I'm just.
I'm not sure anybody that young listens to this show. They'd have to be really young.
Yeah. All right, let's just cut Alfred Hitchcock. I like Master of Suspense if you want. I mean,
I love it.
Well, fine. I don't care.
okay,
Because Matt,
As long as Alfred Hitchcock is in there. Master of Suspense. Okay.
Matt, should I write it down? Do you want to write
You
it
don't
down?
Shut
forget,
up.
yeah.
Go fuck yourself.
Just see, I like to come prepared, Stephen. I look with my notes and
Yeah. I have this thing called a memory.
Yes.
I'm able to remember Master of Suspense.
Well, I'm judging you all, so just
You're going to fit in just fine. It's a judge-a-thon.
all right.
And
All right.
and so one of the things, Steve. So let's just say we're recording, and all of a sudden you go, and then Alfred worked with this guy, and he was a dick. Oh, you know what? I shouldn't have said that. And we'll stop. Just tell Matt, and
Yeah,
Matt
this
will
isn't
edit
like
that
a
out. We'll
live
just
recording.
it's not a live
It will be
recording.
edited and smoothed out. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Stephen, did you ever work with Stephen Randall at Playboy, the editor?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I knew him
Yeah,
very, very well.
Oh, good. I'll should I say hello for?
Please, yes,
It was
please.
him
If you happen
for
to
you.
speak to him, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he brought me into the magazine, and he was my editor through all of it. For my first Playboy interview was with Colin Farrell, and he threw me to that wolf. But he,
No.
he knew I could he knew I could handle it and kick it around too. So that started a great friendship and a really nice, long, rewarding
Nice.
experience. I really enjoyed working with Playboy.
Well,
Yeah,
some of us has worked there too.
Larry and I worked there back in the day. If it weren't for Playboy, this show might not have ever come together.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, way back in the mid-90s we started.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But see, Matt too. Matt was an
was in
executive
it too.
producer on a great comedy show,
That's
couple
true.
comedy shows.
That's correct.
Oh.
Yes.
We wanted to get Sean in, but Sean was a little too just nudity. No, I'm just kidding.
Sure.
He loves nudity. In fact,
Oh, well, okay. Well, so did Hitchcock. So we're all set.
true.
which I want to talk about. We'll get to that.
All right.
Okay. Well,
Shall
why don't we start this?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So Matt will do the opening, and then I will do Stephen. I'll do your introduction. We'll introduce you, and then we'll get rolling.
Okay. And I will introduce the topic,
Yes,
Mhm.
which is
Alfred
Robin Hitchcock,
No,
Master.
of
Director to the
suspense.
stars.
Okay.
No.
All right. Here we go.
Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense.
Thank you very much.
And make it big.
Shut up.
That was good. Yeah, I didn't have time to rewatch a lot of stuff. I watched. There's a couple different Psycho documentaries, but the one in the latest Blu-ray, I watched that one. That one's good.
I watched the documentary on North by Northwest on the disc.
Okay.
And
okay.
But then I watched a couple long Hitchcock documentaries, which were very
cool.
very good.
Yeah, and I watched
Great.
Frenzy just a couple of days ago. I was like,
Yeah.
and
Again, I hadn't watched I watched The Trouble with Harry, which we didn't talk about really.
yeah, I like
Which
that
he
movie. I like that
referenced
movie.
it.
It's so
Yeah.
bizarre. Yeah.
It's I enjoyed it. I'm not sure it's entirely successful.
Yeah, it's an odd kind of mishmash of like dark
Yes.
comedy and murder mystery.
But there's a lot
it's
of great
interesting.
stuff in it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then The Wrong Man I hadn't seen in ages, and so I watched
Yeah,
that. And
that's
The
a
Wrong
great
Man
one.
is like on the edge of your seat.
yeah, and that's the thing is like you forget like the
But
situation.
to have that kind of batting average.
I know.
Oh,
I mean,
it's-
right. I mean, because even like with the maybe a couple here and there that didn't do as well or has
Yeah.
trouble with the studios, but my God, and he's so prolific. I mean,
Yes.
you forget that
Imagine-
he made about 8 or 9 silent films too.
Well,
Before-
he
before-
made. I know before The Lodger he made 2, and one they shelved, and then the other one didn't do that well. I
Right.
guess they what I brought up earlier was that the British studio thought it was a little too highbrow, and they kept
Right.
branding him with that.
Interesting.
And then The Lodger was such a smash hit.
Right.
Now he was cool, but
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, from the Lodger on, I would like to just re-watch everything.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a bunch in there. When I looked at all the films he's done, I was amazed that, like, oh my God, there are
you forget how
quite a few of these that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
And there's just so many good ones. It's like, how can somebody have made so many good movies?
Imagine if we took out the ones that everyone acknowledges as the great ones and just left the rest. And this is a director that did these films.
Yeah.
We'd still consider him a genius.
Oh my God.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Absolutely.
Hugely successful, prolific filmmaker, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't touch on the TV show, which has some really good episodes.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
No.
Even though that's not, I mean, it's
17. He directed 17 episodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just so weird too. The fact that, like, he was like a kind of a TV star in a way.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
With this show,
Right.
with his name in the show, and then he was making these movies.
Yeah, and was
it's crazy.
criticized for it, and they thought that it took away from his gravitas as being a true artist.
Yeah.
Or tour director.
Yeah.
Which is nonsense.
There was a comment, if I remember correctly, that when television started to get big, you had MGM who was fighting it, Universal was fighting it, Paramount embraced it. And so did Hitchcock, because Hitchcock looked at it as, it's a new medium. Let me try this.
Something else to experiment with.
And you guys have heard that there was definitely a difference between if you were a TV star and a film star.
Sure, especially back then, yeah.
It's like if you did TV, they kind of kept you in TV.
Right.
That's why people moved from all these different shows. Right. And it's like people were told, oh, don't do TV unless you only want to do TV. So I'm wondering if, he was frowned upon.
Well,
for that. And
from what I saw in these documentaries, he was. And they thought that was kind of a real artist, a real director wouldn't do that, wouldn't stoop to hosting a TV
level.
show.
Yeah.
But I mean, already you're working against the prejudice against thrillers. So, I mean, he was already sort of painted with that brush.
Yeah.
And I just think that in a lot of ways, you're never going to please these people.
Right, exactly.
You're always going to be looked on. You're always going to be looked at as, something that's not as cool as the big kids.
Right.
Well, that's why when Lord of the Rings 3 and Shape of Water win Best Picture, I look at it as a huge victory. It's like, okay, Best Picture shouldn't mean as much as it does.
Right.
But still, fuck you, Gandhi. We can
Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs.
Now, before we piss all over Gandhi,
Gandhi's a great movie.
No, because I worked in the movie theater that showed Gandhi, and that is a great film.
It is a great movie.
You're missing the point, Larry. You're missing his point completely.
No,
it's a different type of movie. It's a different
obviously.
Type of movie. But when I saw Gandhi, I really enjoyed it. It shouldn't be looked at differently than say Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Just a great movie.
Yeah.
I agree.
Look, and also that year, Gandhi was up against E.T.
The E.T., right?
E.T., The Verdict, Tootsie. And at least, and I think Missing, and at least The Verdict to me and E.T. were better films than Gandhi. I enjoyed them more, but that's me.
Different, but
different.
It's different.
But Gandhi is like an epic, important,
that's
ambitious.
Right. And over the years, the Academy has always gone to that type of film.
Of course.
Oh, that's the good film.
It's tradition.
Yeah.
By the way, there's an actor that I hope gets a chance to play Hitchcock. His name is Jeremy Swift, and he was a butler in Downton Abbey. He played Maggie Smith's butler. He's kind of this portly guy.
I don't remember him.
He's kind of a charactery guy, and he's sort of puckish. But
was he the guy with the murder?
No, that wasn't him. That was Bates.
No, that's
I forget the names of all these guys. It's been years since I've watched it.
I've been watching Ted Lasso, and he's got a bigger part in it. And I'm like, holy shit, that guy could be an amazing, older Hitchcock. But anyway, Jeremy Swift, it's like, maybe he'll get the chance someday. But I thought Toby Jones was pretty damn good in The Girl.
I thought so too. I did. I thought he was good. I wasn't sure if they were going to be like these gross exaggerations of Hitchcock. No, I thought they were fine. Both Anthony Hopkins and Toby Jones. I thought they were both good.
Yeah. All right,
guys.
Okay.
I do have an apology I need to make, though.
Okay.
To me, I accept.
No, to our listeners.
As part of the thing?
Yes.
As part of our deal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
What?
Well, that's good.
Do you want me to do that?
It's a long time coming, but okay.
And let's remind our listeners. See,
that's almost as good as Larry's. What's his face?
James Mason.
Yeah. I was about to say, do you guys realize I didn't once do my James Mason impersonation when we talked about North by Northwest?
Wow.
You made it up by doing the Australian guy, but
Hitchcock. I actually don't do Hitchcock. I do Peter Bogdanovich doing Hitchcock. Okay.
All right.
Here we go.
I do Truffaut talking with Hitchcock.
You know what? I do the translator.
All right.